Welcome, everyone. We're going to begin our State 911 Advisory Board meeting. It's now being called to order. We will start with roll call. I'm looking for Paul. Okay. Paul, we're going to start with roll call.
We have Chief Scott Howland.
Present.
Charles Burdan.
Present.
Charles Cullen.
Present.
Jamie Young. Sheriff Edward Bonner.
Chris Herron here for Sheriff Bonner.
Sheriff James Maley. Chief Nathan Trowernick.
Present.
Leslie Wilson.
Here.
Chief Michael Langston.
Present.
Chief David Wilson.
Here.
Okay, let the record show that both Jamie Young and Sheriff Maley are, welcome. Thank you. And that Sheriff Bonner is here. We have a couple of changes to the agenda I need to announce. Unfortunately, the director of the Governor's Office of Emergency Services will not be able to attend today, so his part on the agenda is being removed. Under reports regarding the AT&T Wireless Technical Overview Services contract with Jill Talley, Cal OES's chief counsel, will be moved up after the closed session. And we are going to, prior to approving the minutes from the last meeting, we're going to go into closed session now. So the State 911 Advisory Board will now vote to convene in closed session pursuant to Government Code 11126, subsection C, subsection 18. Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved. Second.
All right.
And all in favor?
Aye. Aye. Aye.
We have to go through the...
We have
okay,
to go through
that, Paul.
All right. Chief Scott Howland.
Yes.
Charles Burdan.
Aye.
Charles Cullen.
Aye.
Jamie Young's absent. Edward Bonner. Sheriff Edward Bonner. Sheriff James Maley. Chief Nathan Trowernick.
Aye.
Leslie Wilson.
Aye.
Chief Michael Langston.
Aye.
Chief David Wilson.
Aye.
We will now go into closed session. We will return in about 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order. I needed to make one more announcement that I failed to make earlier. Due to the amount of topics on the agenda, all public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. And so the next on the agenda, as I had discussed earlier, will be the AT&T Wireless Technical Overview Services contract with Jill Talley.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jill Talley. I'm the Chief Legal Counsel at Cal OES, and part of my presentation to you all today is to go over, there seems to be some confusion about what contracts we have, what projects are completed, and what projects are ongoing. So I'm going to give you a brief general overview and bring you up to date about what's going on. So the state of California has 2 master service agreements, one with AT&T and one with Verizon. And at different times, the state has utilized these contracts to do various projects and to analyze the 911 system. And there's confusion about what projects we have done and the value of those projects and what AT&T and Verizon do for us. And What concerns me about that is much of the confusion and much of the discussion is driven by vendors. And as employees of the state, our obligation is to be focused on what's the most important for the 911 system and what's most important for the state. And you all on the advisory board, as you all know, have an ethical duty to the state and not to vendors. So just that as a backdrop. So to give you a history of what we've done and where we're at now. From 2007 to 2011, we had the RED project. Now the RED project was through our master services agreement with AT&T. And AT&T utilized a subcontractor, which was PSN. The RED project, the sole purpose of the RED project was to analyze why 911 calls were not being answered. There were almost 43% of 911 calls were not being answered. At the end of the RED project in 2011, that number was reduced to 1%. So it was successful and completed. And it's important to note that project looked at empirical data, past data, to figure out the routing and to figure out what was going on, and they corrected it. Okay, so that's the RED project. Then from 2013 to 2015, again, we used AT&T to perform a service to analyze the cell towers and where the antennas were pointed and to see if there were any technical difficulties that were causing routing problems. We took this information and gave it back to AT&T and the other carriers, but as you all know, we have no control over what those carriers do with their cell towers. So after 2 years of that project and spending close to $3 million, we stopped that project. Again, we still have our contract with AT&T, but that project was completed from 2013 to 2015. So today, we also have another contract, as I said, with Verizon. And through Verizon, we are doing the ECATs program. And ECATs is done through a subcontractor called Direct Technology. And what ECATs does is ECATs looks at transfer data, and we are doing that today. It's real time, looking at real-time transfer data to try and analyze it and minimize the transfers. And that is going on today, and our director has sent out letters to all the PSAPs to have them look at the transfer data and to identify problems, and then have a discussion about where we can make changes. So those are the projects, and they're all different, and they're unique, and they had an intended purpose. But overall, what we're doing at Cal OES is looking at the overall 911 system, and we have been for years. ECAT's been being unraveled or unrolled since 2009. So we're constantly evolving, constantly looking at this, and we're trying to do the best for the state of California. And I just want you to keep in mind, when you hear public comment, say to yourselves, where is it coming from? Is it coming from vendors? And it's also, is it coming from people in the medical community who have a business interest with those vendors? Because we have an obligation to be objective and look at the information objectively and make the best choice for the state of California. Thank you. Yeah.
When you talk about the issue with ECATs, right, or not the issue, but when you talk about the contracts, there's been a discussion up here in the last couple meetings about, and we're going to talk about it later, about possibly doing a trial basis with different vendors. And direct ECATs and PSN, through AT&T and Verizon, do they have a current contract with the state, money aside? I know there's who's going to pay for it, but if the state 911 office chooses a vendor, can they act upon it, or does a new contract have to be drafted up?
So the way it works is we said it goes out to bid, It is competitively bid, and someone wins that bid. The state of California typically doesn't have multiple contracts doing the same thing because that's not efficient. It's not a proper use of the taxpayers' money. So when ECATs direct technology was chosen through our contract through Verizon, that was through the public contracting code rules. And they were the ultimate vendor that is selected is in compliance with those rules. And as a matter of fact, I don't even know that we would be able to get something approved when you're already paying for that service, because that would be seen as wasteful.
Let's say we look at those services as, you know, apples and oranges are different services. If
Apples and oranges, that's
concluded. I guess my question is, could the state go into a contract with AT&T to provide services similar to what they did in the RED project?
Well, so to look at whether 911 calls are being answered properly, I would tell you that wouldn't get through my office because we've already done that and we've already fixed that problem.
Okay, so you're looking at more what the need of the contract is versus just that they can enter into a contract.
We look at the need. We look at whether it's a valuable contract. We look at how much it costs, whether it's the right use of the taxpayers' money. We look at all those things, and then we set it out to bid, and we pick the person that complies with the bidding process and is the best selection based on that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Jill, what was the scope of the area of the RED project? Was it the entire state or a selected area?
The entire state, wasn't it?
To the best of my memory, it was the entire state, but what happened is when they looked at the cell sectors, they only identified a certain number of cell sectors that needed to be looked at and then actually mapped with the empirical data.
I believe it was cell sectors adjacent to the freeway, correct?
Correct, because the concern was at that time that all the calls were going to CHP, and they just couldn't be answered.
Okay. And then as far as the ECATs program, who's analyzing the data now?
So right now, our 911 branch is analyzing the data, but it's on all the local PSAPs are analyzing their data. The CHP is analyzing their data, and all that data is going to be reported up to OES.
But frankly, we hope that's the case.
No, it is the case. We sent out a letter. We demanded that everyone do it by the end of August 31st. And if they don't do it, we will be going after them to do it, and we fund them, so we will make sure it is done.
What's the statutory authority to require them to do that?
We fund them, and if they don't do it, we will do it for them, and we will pull their funding.
Future funding.
We will, and we will also post it on our website that they're not in compliance, and we will vigorously pursue them any way we can.
Again, what's the statutory authority?
Well, I don't know that I need statutory authority, and I'm not aware of any PSAP that is unwilling to comply.
I understand that, but you're missing the point that many PSAPs have lost staffing and don't have the people. And the state has the funding to do it.
And we have offered, if anyone cannot do it, if a PSAP cannot do it, we will help them and do it for them. It is not a complicated process. It is an easy, automated process that can be done quite quickly.
And my question involves what you were talking about, the PSN, the most recent contract, where they were looking at specifically cell tower accuracy. Are the azimuths correct? Is the directionals correct? You got that data, you gave it back to the carriers, is what I understand. The carriers said they were not going to do anything about that, or were not going to make the appropriate adjustments to their equipment.
It's my understanding that they said that either they wouldn't do anything, or that because it changes so frequently that it wasn't really relevant. So, and at the end of the day, we have no control over that.
Well, that concerns me, because you just on one hand say you're going to vigorously pursue the PSAPs for not complying. But on the other hand, it doesn't sound like you're taking a harder line possibly with the carriers to say these are accuracy issues for 911 that need to be addressed. And certainly they have very large contracts with the state.
Okay, there are two things with that. Number one, I don't have any information that says that anything that in that project indicated that there were problems that needed to be fixed, number one. And number two, we don't have control over the carriers. The FCC does. And if we were aware of a problem, we absolutely would hound the FCC until it was resolved. But because there is only chatter about potential problems and not a real identified problem, we can't operate in a vacuum.
Well, aren't you getting statistical data from PSN about which cell sites or sectors are not accurate?
What we got from PSN was historical data about what was happening in the past, not real time. So the direction and where the antennas are pointed changes. So it's not, my understanding was that the carriers did not find it to be valuable information. And why should the state of California pay $123,000 a month to PSN to gather information that the carriers should be doing themselves? And maybe with the pressure that needs to be put on is the FCC and the carriers to do this work themselves and not put it on the backs of the taxpayer dollars. When we have limited resources, we have to use them wisely. And that project was not a wise use of our resources. The ECAT system is.
Well, I'm still confused. So you spent this $120,000 a month over the past, 3 years? So you must have got some information back from PSN that indicated there are a certain number of sectors, let's say 10%, that are not accurate. You went back to the carriers, said, hey, we have these cell sectors that are not accurate, and the carrier said, well, we're not going to do anything about it, and that was the end of it?
Well, this is the way it worked. There was a system in place where you could log in and see the information, but again, the information was historical. It was not real-time data. It was not AT&T today, right now. There are complications. So by the time the carriers got it, or were given it, they didn't find that it was relevant and they didn't do anything with it.
Well, it concerns me that there are cell sectors out there that are not.
Concerns me that you say that when you don't, without actual information. I mean, that is the problem with this continual discussion. There's the big boogeyman of all the things going wrong instead of looking at what really is going wrong and what we do have the power to change, right? And so instead of focusing on what we could or might or should do, there are lots of things that we can do. And the CHP is an excellent example of what they've been doing with the ECAT system.
Okay, well,
I think we would, as an advisory board, and correct me if I'm wrong, would like to see that data. How many of the sampled sectors showed as an accurate setting, or the azimuth was off? That would be important information for us to know.
We still have all that information. And
it's not anecdotal. There actually is data out there.
Historical data, yes.
Okay, thank you.
well, and I just would like to say, being on this board for 10 years, if that information was shared with us, we could advise on that. We can't advise on something if we don't have the facts in front of us. And so we get that information from various places, and we have to do the best we can sitting up here to advise the state. But if we were being provided that information up front to have that analysis, we could probably do a better job.
Ms. Talley, I disagree with you about your conclusions about things broken or not broken, and I'd love to have you come, and I'd love to show you some of the data that I have that concerns me as as running a police department. But since you mentioned the letter, I have a concern about this letter, and I'm not so sure who to address it to. But on August 3rd, a letter was sent out to all the chiefs and sheriffs that run PSAPs, essentially demanding, which surprised me a little bit with the tone of the letter, that in 27 days you were to do this analysis and get it back to the state. So I was concerned about the timeline, as Chief Langston said. One, it's a staffing issue. Two, you got to make sure that the program works well, and in this case, some work had to be done to make sure you can get into the data. And it's the middle of the summer, so you have 27 days to complete this task that, frankly, we've been talking about since I've been here for the last year, and all of a sudden now we have 27 days to complete it. Which I thought, okay, well, what are you going to do if we don't do it within 27 days? But then you're kind of threatening, I guess, that you, the state, I'm sorry, not you personally, but the state could somehow make it a financial burden to the PSAPs if they don't comply within 27 days. So that concerns me. And I think it's, it's something I think the PSAPs would have to have their own attorneys look at, because we have to make a decision. If we don't comply, are we going to lose state funding or not get funding in a few years to redo our...
Well, why wouldn't you comply?
I just identified that. Staffing.
Suppose you get an extension, another 30 days. Why wouldn't you do
Oh,
it?
I'm not, I feel like you're irritated or something, you're upset.
I just don't understand why. I feel you're irritated.
Well,
And
I am
don't
just 'cause-
understand why you wouldn't want to comply, why you wouldn't want this information. Don't you think it's valuable
So,
information?
yes, I do.
And so if it's a timing issue, we would give you more time. If
And-
it's a resource issue, we will help you with that.
And so what I did is I personally, because I don't have the staff and I wanted to dig into it a little bit, I looked into, follow the rules on the letter, and I wanted to confirm the results that I pulled up in the ECATs, and I wrote an email earlier this week, and maybe someone will address it, but in more than maybe a half a dozen cases, the data was wrong. It essentially said that you got this call outside of your jurisdiction and you didn't transfer it. And then we have 911 tapes that show that we did transfer it. So I'm not so sure the system is working correctly, and I guess we can maybe get that addressed later. So I think there's some issues right now with the reliability of the system.
And this is a process, right? So we're going to identify those issues. We're going to try and cure those issues. But we have to start somewhere. We have to have some accountability. We have to have some deadlines. If they're not the right deadlines, we'll work with you. If it's a resource issue, we'll work with you. But we have to start somewhere.
And this comes on the heels of what a committee of this advisory board has been working on about trying to find a scope of work that will make it more accurate for the PSAPs to analyze the issues of routing. And I think looking at transfers only is not such a great way to look at issues because it all relies on transferring. I'd rather look at to see where the calls are coming from and who's getting those calls to begin with. And I haven't seen any product right now that allows me to do that. And I think that's why this advisory board had a work group work on a scope of work that can hopefully produce a product that is more usable.
Well, and just because I mentioned ECATs, it doesn't mean that it's the only thing we're doing and the only thing we will do. We have many plans ahead, and we look forward to hearing your input. This is just one slice of many things in the overall overview of the 911 system, and it's a start.
And I do need to interject something. We did have a special meeting on April 30th, 2015, where the board did unanimously vote on us moving forward with this ECATs product to look at the transfers. So this is a carry-on to that. So, I mean, this was something that the board did vote on for us to move forward with.
And I'd just like to say in the minutes that Chief Charnet asked for the 911 branch to provide those quarterly reports as soon as they could, and that was in May.
Yeah. So just a couple things, and that is myself and other people who were appointed by the governor to this advisory group around the same time. We're not here for the RED project. And in my time here, I've never actually seen any documentation about the RED project, any of its work product. My concern right now as it stands is there are challenges to the 911 system, not just here in California. The challenges that we are talking about today are national problems, but obviously our primary interest is California. My concern is this whole conversation is becoming about a vendor instead of about a solution. So regardless of how anybody feels about data from the past, data from the present, data for the future, we need to redirect this conversation about the solution moving forward. And that's just my personal opinion. The citizens of the state of California are not served from a debate over a single vendor. The citizens of California are served by a vigorous debate, proper process, and inclusion of the PSAPs in a solution moving forward. The identified problem is the cellular carriers. This is not just something that I've heard anecdotally here in California. It's something that the National FirstNet Board has recognized. It's something that that anybody who works in the communications industry anywhere in this country is going to say is almost an insurmountable mountain to climb. Our efforts need to be directed towards the FCC towards federal legislation in getting the carriers to respond to issues around 911 accuracy and 911 routing, period. This group needs to refocus. We need clear direction and leadership to get this boat headed in the right direction. We can talk about PSN all day. It doesn't change what we need to do moving forward. That's all I have.
Let me add one thing to that. I think what Chief Charnock is trying to say is don't fix the blame, fix the problem. And I think what we have a problem here is a problem of communications. And when Director Ghilarducci puts out something with a 28-day deadline, I think that's a problem of communications and not allowing the PSAPs to have time to react to that. 28 days in the life of a PSAP manager especially is nothing. So on behalf of the PSAPs that I represent, I found that the timeline was too short, was not enough discussion about how to get this process done. And no disrespect to Ms. Talley here, but I find that the comments that she's made about non-compliance are offensive to the PSAPs, and I take exception to that, and I hope that we can communicate better and work through this problem and get this work done. I think every PSAP wants to make better use of their routing, and there are ways to fix that.
And I just want to say that if PSAPs need more time, we will give them more time. And I was only, when challenged, what are you going to do to enforce it? It's not that we expect the PSAPs not to comply. It's not that we don't want them to comply. We will give them the resources. We will give them the time. We will work with them, and in any way we can. Now, if there is a PSAP that is unwilling to do that, we do have authority to financial, at least. And that is all I was going. And I don't expect that any PSAP is not going to want to comply.
I think you'll find that none of them are unwilling, but a lot of them are either unable or unknowing. And we will help. And we're going to, like I said, this is a process. There are going to be some that are going to be able to do it really quickly and get that information to us, and that's going to be great. And for those outliers that can't, we're going to throw resources at it, and we're going to help them, and we're going to try and figure it out. We have the CHP has offered to help, and we will make sure that it happens. But for those that can easily comply, let's get those off the table, and then we can focus our attention on those that are having difficulty, because we understand that.
Just to echo what Chief Charnock said, I think this body should be completely agnostic in terms of what we're looking for. We're looking for requirements, and that's what the working committee and the long-range planning committee has been working on for the last 6 months. What are the requirements that we need in an application or a system that's going to be able to define what the routing issues are and how to make better decisions? And we are certainly, nobody should be endorsing a specific solution at this point. This is something we should be going out to find a solution. ECATs is in place. I think that there's a lot of good reports in that application. The one thing that concerned me is this seems very rushed. This came out, you've got 28 days to do it. This body was not aware that that was going out. We could have been informed at this meeting and maybe had it go out subsequent to this meeting and given an additional time for the PSAPs to comply. It is important information that we need to know, but it just seemed a little disingenuous that this came out with a very limited time frame, and then we're hearing from you that there's going to be some significant penalties for any PSAP that doesn't comply.
There are no penalties. May I be clear? There are no penalties.
That was the implication from your previous statement.
Well, because when people say, well, what's if they intentionally don't comply? right? That was the question that was asked.
I don't think anybody's going to intentionally not comply, but
Right, and so what I want to make sure, I want to beat this drum again. If PSAP, we had to start somewhere. I understand the timeline may seem rushed, but you have to start somewhere in order to understand the system or to understand who's having difficulty. A deadline was necessary.
I think it would have been beneficial to have notified this body that it was going to occur.
Well, again, in this body is an advisory board, and for just a routine, hey, look at your transfer data, we didn't feel that it rose to the level to get a committee together to advise as to
I would take issue with that. A letter from the director of OES to the police chiefs is not a routine correspondence.
Well, with regard to this project, it will become one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment? Again, limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name
Don Reich is my name,
and organization.
Public Safety Network. So first of all, to address some of the comments from Ms. Talley, the notion that vendors are driving what happens in this group has no real significance in terms of historical fact. There's always been a partnership with vendors and the public safety community. Many of the innovations that we all benefit from are specifically driven by vendors coming with solutions, offering to public safety experts, and then through a process of integration, that's how innovation occurs. She spoke of some boogeyman, of some like fictitious problem. There is a real problem. There's 8,000 calls a day that are answered by the wrong PSAP. This is not a pretend problem. This is what we've been trying to get through for many, many years. When the RED project was launched, we recognized that only a small percentage of the sectors were analyzed. There was a lot more work to be done. That is why the previous administration, prior to Ms. Wong coming on board, decided that this should be on the CalNet contract. It should be an ongoing thing. We've proven that the technology works, and there's been pushback, and pushback. To finally, we're at the point now where it's some kind of emergency where by August 31st, the ECAT solution is going to be implemented. We've been promised there'd be a fair process of going through an evaluation. It seems to me that hopefully there'll be some more discussion, but we want clarity. We think we deserve clarity on what that process will actually be. The WTS program found real serious errors. There's monthly reports based on real-time data, not historical data, real-time data. We analyze thousands of cell sectors every month and found alarming rates of errors that are being delivered to the call takers. Things that can hurt, kill people, have property damage. These are significant data errors that deal with delivering the wrong address in the alley stream, delivering wrong information about the location of a tower for a phase 1 call, etc. These are real serious problems. The notion that that the 911 department has no influence over the wireless service providers seems to me to be silly. It's never been that case for the last 20 years that we've been involved in this department. If there were issues, they would be highlighted, and there'd be a way to work with the wireless service providers to get them corrected. The irony is that we're talking now about adjusting the routing of wireless calls. Well, who does that? The wireless service providers have to make those changes. So, of course, we can influence the wireless service providers. Of course, we can tell the wireless service providers, hey, you're truncating the address on an address that you're delivering to a call taker. Your IMSAG data is incorrect. Of course, we can go back to the wireless service providers and make these recommendations. But you just heard Ms. Talley say, hey, we can't do that. It's not within our statutory ability. So I think much of what she said is incorrect. Talked about the problems being fixed. They're not fixed. They're ongoing. They're serious. They need to be addressed. We want a fair, competitive process to go out to define how routing should best be done, not simply look at the transfer method. Let's look at the proven method that for 6 phases throughout the state of California worked. It won awards. It saved $20 million a
3
year.
minutes.
Am I 3 minutes up?
Thank you. Please state your name, who you're with.
My name is Kurt Warner. I'm the president of Public Safety Network. I'm not sure in 3 minutes I can address the accusations and the inaccuracies that Ms. Talley made. I'll give it a try. I would ask to have maybe the same amount of time. It seems like this is a pertinent question. So, one thing, let's make it clear. Where is Talley? If I were to ask her if she's ever talked to me, what would she say? I'd tell you what she'd have to say is that she's never talked to me. Nobody from OES has ever talked to our company. We've been here for 20 years collecting data in real time, 24 hours a day. We started this process. We've been doing it longer than anybody in the world. We invented it. We were the first people to do this, and it's been continuous. So maybe she should have taken a minute to give us a call, and we could have helped her out and saved her some time. Time is what it's all about here. We're trying to save time so the responders can get to the victims quicker. Time is all we have. Our time is up because we were fired today. Well, we were fired a month ago. And it's the second time in 2 years that we were fired by Ms. Wong. 20 years we've been here. We've been working on fixed price contracts. We have got our work done under budget, on time. We've won national awards for this department. And somebody should have taken a look and just given us a call. Ms. Talley, I think that's her name, started off by stating the facts. That we had a contract, the ITMSA or MSA, in fact it was, I think 2034 if you want to look it up, that she claims we were under contract with AT&T. There can be nothing farther from the truth. She should check her facts. That was a contract straight with the Department of General Services. Kelly, get your facts straight. You can watch this on TV. And I'll tell you what else happened. She said there were baseless claims. We came, as always, for 20 years to this department. Leah Sennett, Daphne Rowe. A lot of you might not have been around here, but these people were innovators. They asked us to find problems and to solve problems. These people worked at the urgency that every fireman and policeman goes out every day to save lives. They do their job with urgency. We haven't seen that in the last couple of years since new leaders have come in here. There's been foot dragging, and just like Ms. Talley did, Ms. Wong and Mr. Anderson have been a little loose with the facts. And you can check the facts.
Your 3 minutes are up. I apologize.
And let me also say, we refer to this contract. What happened was when we started this contract, we had made specific issues that there are deadly problems going on with routing.
Sir?
Ms. Wong, excuse me, Ms. Wong, what she did, she told us on this contract that is specifically designed for routing, specifically designed for helping manage the configuration of the network. She said to Don and myself, in front of a lot of other people, this is a routing contract, but whatever you do, do not do routing.
Your time is up.
That's the truth. And I would request that I have more time to finish.
Please submit in writing any information that you want to add, but we've limited all public comment to 3 minutes. You've gone over, and I allowed that to happen. So if you have additional comments, please submit to the board in writing. We would like to hear the rest of your comments in writing to the board.
My name's Pat McElroy. I'm the fire chief of the city of Santa Barbara. I'm here representing the Santa Barbara Association of Fire Chiefs, Santa Barbara County Association of Fire Chiefs. Thanks for your time. I was urged to be conciliatory. I was urged to foster a cooperative attitude, and I don't quite know how to keep that in check after the initial speaker, so I will try to do what I can. I'm glad that I wrote this down and I can follow the script instead of saying what's on my mind. We have been and continue to be interested in the routing of wireless phone calls and why and how they end up at a particular PSAP. In conversations with state officials and members of this board, we've been encouraged to take a cooperative approach to a complex issue. We want to make clear this is not a fire versus PSAP or a fire police versus CHP issue. This affects us all, and we all need to come together to solve this. It's an emerging issue in the public eye, and that it's causing concern in public safety agencies that were previously unaware that these problems existed. Our concerns are centered on the proximity of the caller to the PSAP taking their call, increased call handling times affecting response times, incorrect or misheard information being exchanged during call transfers, lack of local knowledge, landmarks, or terminology that would help locate callers, increasing lack of understanding by first responders of how the 911 system currently works. After a lot of discussion, we first asked the state 911 office in February for information for calls originating in our county for a specific time period in 2014. In the interest of brevity, I'm not going to go into that, but we did receive that information after 2 requests. I have here, and they are available to you, some sector cutover decisions that involve 2 significant incidents in that period of time that we wanted to look at because we wanted to see if routing played a significant role in outcomes and wanted to confirm if what we thought was true or if it was not true. Those routing sheets that you have show those 2 incidents. They are startlingly simple, and as tests over the past few days have shown still remarkably accurate. The first involves a Verizon sector at 1919 State Street in downtown Santa Barbara. It is west-facing, and during the time studied, took 797 911 calls. 65% of those calls were from the streets of downtown Santa Barbara, and 35 were from the Highway 101 corridor that crosses that area. The maps will show that it's a roughly 2-block area that is included in the on-highway portion, an area that is really in the city of Santa Barbara response zone. It was proposed that this sector be cut over to the Santa Barbara PD PSAP. The decision was made to keep it as it was routed to Ventura CHP. A decision to cut over to SBPD would have resulted in a net increase to that PSAP of only 6 calls per week. We feel this decision was incorrect based on the percentages involved. That sector still is that way and has not been optimized since 2011. I'm talking as fast as I can. On January 30th of 2014, a wireless call was routed appropriately to the Ventura CHP. An error occurred during the transfer in the EMS units from Santa Barbara Fire Department, Montecito Fire Protection District, and American Medical Response were dispatched to another address on the east side of Santa Barbara. The correct address was not determined for several minutes. The dispatch was then adjusted. Unfortunately, the victim was not revived. The cell sector has not been re-examined and does not show up in the recent audit of our county. The second sector is at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and I want to take a moment and recognize that the CHP and the Santa Barbara County Coordinator were made aware of the sector's problem in 2015, and they took steps to notify the carrier of that problem.
The 3 minutes is up. I apologize. If you could wrap it up.
I drove from Santa Barbara. I'm driving home today. I just needed 1 more minute. If I can ask the board's indulgence.
I let PSN have 1 more minute because we went over that time as well, so I will give the same to you.
Okay. The sector cutover decision sheet you have includes a Verizon wireless west-facing site that during the time studied, 2 years, took over 1,050 911 calls. 99.4% of the calls should have gone to Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office, PSAP, about 3 miles away. 0.6% were from Highway 1. All 1,050 were routed 40 miles away to the Ventura CHP. The sector status was recommended to be cut over to Santa Barbara SO by both the CHP and the county coordinator. It would have resulted in an increased call volume to the Santa Barbara Sheriff, so 1 call per day. The cutover never happened. They're still going to Santa Barbara. On May 23rd, over 3 years after the recommendation, a mass shooting took place in Isla Vista, which is the community directly affected by the west-facing site. 24 911 calls were placed in less than an hour. All 24 picked up by this site went to Ventura. That is a 2,300% increase in call volume compared to a normal day. Keep in mind this cutover had been recommended but was still pending. And until this Tuesday, despite the efforts of the county coordinator, Lisa Matheson of Santa Barbara County, and the request of the CHP, the cutover had still not occurred until Tuesday afternoon. All these calls were still going to Ventura because Verizon doesn't pay attention to what you're asking them to do.
Thank you.
I have a lot more, but
and if you have more, please submit it in writing to the board. We would like to hear the rest of the comments. Okay, are there any other public comments before we move on? Okay, we'll go to the next item on the agenda, as the agenda was moved around a little bit, and that is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. So are there any comments, questions, changes from the minutes? Okay, let us go through the minutes process before we vote. We will open it up to public comment. Are there any comments on the minutes? Changes? Okay, are there public comments on the minutes?
During the last meeting in Orange County, Mr. Anderson presented some facts about the RED project.
Okay. Sir, are they in the minutes? Are there changes to the minutes that you would like to comment on specifically?
The minutes refer to a report that was submitted by your department, and those facts in there are absolutely wrong. So do you want me to take this time to correct them, or would you rather incorporate wrong information into your meeting minutes?
Okay, I'm looking at the minutes. I've just tried to figure out which area. Does the board know which area he's talking about? I'm a little perplexed.
Well, I'll help you.
Which page?
You know, maybe Don can help me with that, and we'll refer to the report that was presented.
Actually, I'm focused on the minutes. If you could tell me which page and what you would be recommending changes to the minutes.
It's an approval of the last meeting minutes. So let me look at what the last meeting minutes were.
Okay.
Here, let me see.
I have them. Okay, if I'd like to go back, if you have no comments to the minutes, I'd like to go back to the...
comments to the minutes.
I'm waiting, sir.
Okay, the comments were on the report that you all asked about, that Mr. Anderson gave in response to the earlier request. When I asked you, you said there was no contract, and there was a contract, and he came up with a report explaining the two different contracts and said and referred to results of the RED project.
There is a document of the minutes, and this is what I'm asking that the board look at and get public comments on. This was made available to everybody attending the meeting, so if you have comments on the minutes.
It says presentation. Mr. Anderson informed State 911 Advisory Board meeting ECATs for reports. Right there. That's one.
In that report, there was a slide deck, and there's errors in that slide deck. So would you like those to comment on that slide deck errors?
Okay. We will take the comments to either go back and look at the slide and make changes to the slide. I'm bringing this back to the board. So do you want to take the public comment? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as is? What would be the board's desire? We can hold this off till next meeting if you'd like a chance to go back.
I think it's just easier to try to resolve this outside of the advisory board meeting and bring it back next meeting for approval.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
Do I have that second motion?
Second.
All in favor? Yeah, I called it a motion. Thank you. All in favor, Paul, if you could go down the list. And I apologize, we need to go down the list to comply with Bagley-Keene so we know how people are voting. Paul?
Okay. Chief Scott Howland.
Aye.
Charles Burdan.
Aye.
Charles Cullen.
Aye.
Sheriff Edward Bonner.
Aye.
Chief Nathan Charnett.
Aye.
Leslie Wilson.
Aye.
Chief Michael Langston.
Aye.
Chief David Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes will be held and re-looked at the next meeting. The next item on the board agenda is, make sure I didn't miss anything. Unfinished business. We start with the legislative update, which is an advisory board agenda item. So does any of the board members have information on the legislative updates?
I'll just make note that currently there's Assembly Bill 510, which in its current form does two things. First, it has language requiring the 911 branch to re-implement the RED project for location accuracy and routing. The second piece of it is to change the setting of funding formula from a percentage on intrastate telephone charges to a sliding scale fixed rate of 15 cents to 75 cents on an undetermined basis. The California Public Safety 911 Coalition that I represent also has been in consultation with Assemblymember Rodriguez's office about this bill. It's a 2-year bill, so it's not going to be passed this year. It's the Assembly member has assured us that public safety is going to get some input on this, and we'll try to clean up some of the language, especially on the setting apart of it, so that we can get the bill to where it's going to fund not only ongoing maintenance, but also the next generation funding. So we think it's going to be a good bill if we can get the language cleaned up, and I think certainly Assemblymember Rodriguez and Assemblymember Williams have the best of intentions in it. I think we just need to kind of steer them in the correct direction to get the language so that we can have the most adequate funding for that bill.
Any other discussion or comments on legislation updates?
I have a question, Karen. The committee that Charles represents includes most of the public safety answering point representatives and so forth. Where's the Public Safety Communications Office and OAS on this particular issue regarding the funding? I haven't seen anything particular to addressing the legislative changes that are negatively impacting the CETNA fund.
We are working internally to make sure that we have accurate information, and we will be coming out and re-looking at this across the board. One thing, because it is public funds, we want to make sure that we have totally accurate data and to go through before we comment. You see the CETNA fund condition statement, and then we also provide you with the look of where we project that we're going to have some issues with the funding for CETNA.
Thank you.
That timeline has moved up.
That's what the data indicates today, and that's the data that we're going to go back and refine and ensure that that is where we're at. Okay, any other comments? Next item is the wireless accuracy discussion with the 911 Advisory Board.
This is just a standing item on here and for updates from the state office on where we're at working with the FCC and some of their rulings and accuracy and next generation 911. It's just something that we need to keep aware of and continually discuss the accuracy and XY coordinates and what that means in the next system. We have challenges right now in the current system that's only going to complicate moving to next gen 911, and so it would be helpful. I know you participate in the meetings and to keep us updated on that.
Absolutely. And one of the comments that Chief Trowerneck made earlier is that we might want, as a board, to develop a letter to the FCC from the State 911 Advisory Board.
I think that would be a good idea to do.
As long as this would be an appropriate time to discuss in this topic, to further discuss the letter and some issues I brought up in the email that I wrote earlier this week.
Actually, that was going to come up under the reports from the 911 office. Okay,
great.
If that's okay?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, that way we can kind of keep
Perfect.
some semblance. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, what we can do is we will, from the 911 branch, draft an FCC letter and provide it at the next meeting, and maybe actually provide it to the long-range planning work group to see about getting it refined so we can look at a final letter by the next meeting. Okay? Thank you.
The LRPC meets in October, and then our next meeting is November.
Okay, that would be actually very good timing. Okay, any other comments? Next item is the final review, the Statement of Work Wireless Accuracy Pilot Test, Long Range Planning Committee. Hi, Chris, thank you.
So you have before you, and I know that you received in your packet, the final draft of the wireless routing scope of work. This is the document that the 911 work group worked on, as well as the long-range planning committee at our last couple of meetings. We did not make any changes at yesterday's meeting, so I just wanted to share with you some of the discussion and provide some direction for your discussion today. If you have any questions, of course, let me know. A couple of things came up. One was the question of transfers, and I think you guys even touched on a little bit today. And our discussion yesterday was that while this document does talk a lot about transfers, we also have covered the call origination data, and that's in section 210 and thereabout. So the LRPC felt like we're really asking both vendors to to take a look at both. We're not exclusive to transfers, although certainly the document is heavy on the word transfer. There was also some discussion about the definition of what is a transfer, and Michelle, I think it's provided us some direction. Essentially, the way we're going forward is that we're treating a transfer the same way that it was treated all the way back to the RED project. A transfer is when a PSAP receives a call and uses their keypad or their phone system to route that call to another PSAP, either through a star code or through a 10-digit transfer. Quite a bit has been added to the third page, and that's the desirable features of a long-term solution. So there was also some question about that brought up yesterday, so I wanted to provide you with a little bit of our thought process there. As we worked through this document, we felt like there were a lot of things that did not seem like they could be perhaps taken on in a short-term project that this is calling for, but we did not want to lose that information because we felt like it was very valuable for the end product. Again, this is really just an exploratory item, right? It's to allow the vendors who've indicated an interest to show us what they can do. We wanted to keep the scope of work so that they could do just that. Try to not keep it so narrow, but allow them to show, this is what we can offer as a solution for eliminating or helping to eliminate some of the wireless routing issues that we have. So we did move quite a few things to the long-term features page. The discussion yesterday was that we feel like if vendors are able to do some of those things today, that certainly we would, and hopefully you would agree, be more than happy to see that in their response to this scope of work. It was also brought up, and I think we would look to the state to perhaps help us, help everyone understand if the advisory board votes to accept this document today and move forward with this project, when the responses come back, what is the process going to be? I don't think we've really vetted that out and discussed where we go from there once those responses come back. So I think it would be a good idea to identify those today. I think that's it. Charlie or Chuck, unless you have anything else that we should add? Essentially, the LRPC is submitting this document to you and would request that after discussion that you, and if you make any changes, that you vote to move forward with this scope of work and the project that we've been talking about for a few months now.
Comments, questions by the board?
I'd like to I'd like to thank the Long Range Planning Committee, because looking at the outline, it seems like you guys have done a very, very good job kind of capturing all the different issues. And I think it goes back to the complexity of the whole issue, and how do you make sure calls are routed to reduce the number of transfers, and it's more complex than just looking at the transfer rate. I think it also touches on an issue that Chief McElroy brought up from the standpoint of, and I think you put it on the long range or long-term solution, is how do we automatically track those that we've requested for a changeover to make sure they actually occur. I know there's frustration in Santa Barbara that there's been a couple sectors that we have all agreed that needed to be changed that the carriers didn't change. And so I think that is one of those things that would be helpful, I think, for all PSAPs from that standpoint. And it'd be interesting to see what technology, if it's doable today or if it's more of a long-term, it needs to be developed to go out there. And I think it also talks to the fact that I think our solution is a phased solution from the standpoint of it's going to take many different tools to ultimately do it, because I think every situation is different. There's some that are quite easy, and that's the low-hanging fruit. There's others that are a lot more complex, and regardless of how we map or put it out, we got to sit down and chat from the standpoint of get the players together. And I know we have a number of sectors that aren't just 2 jurisdictions, it's 5, 6, 7 jurisdictions, and it's really getting everybody together to sit down and figure out, okay, what's in the best interest of the public. So I appreciate the Long Range Planning Committee and the recommendations that they've come up with.
I think one of the things we were looking for in the Long Range Planning Committee was sort of transparency. Where does the call start? Can we see the whole call data record from onset to termination in every PSAP that it hits? I think that's important in terms of making those decisions. We really tried to look at this from a completely agnostic viewpoint. What are the requirements that we would need in this application or this system, and what to make good decisions on routing? And that, I think, is everybody's ultimate goal. And we were not looking at a specific solution. We came up with these requirements based on what the working committee developed. So I think this was a great job by the working committee and further developed by the Long Range Planning Committee. The questions we had is, what is the process now? We've come up with these requirements. We're not going to go out and put out an RFI or an RFP. That's the state's role, and to decide on what this solution would be. I think we'd certainly like to see the results and have some input on what we think meets the requirements that we put out there. But I think we're more asking a question: what is the process from here? What's the evaluation process going to be? What's the timeline going forward? And how does the state see this going further in the future?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm about to make myself even more popular, because I have a question as the LRPC contemplates this. Has the LRPC contemplated a possible solution that is non-technology based, such as perhaps recommending that the state 911 office incentivize consolidation of dispatch centers to reduce the number of PSAPs that exist. Boom. Okay. Just to me, I mean, that's something that the technology is good and all these other things are great, but at its core, when you peel back the onion, the more PSAPs there are, the more opportunities there are for misroutes and those kind of things to happen. Just wondering if there is something the 911 office could do to incentivize regional centers and a greater level of collaboration and cooperation. So I just wasn't sure if your group had that discussion.
Well, that wasn't.
We could probably all speak to it. I don't think it came up in the scope of work discussion, but that absolutely has come up in previous discussions that we've had in the LRPC. And so it's certainly, if it's the advisory board's pleasure, it's something that the LRPC could put on the the agenda moving forward to revisit. Something we've discussed with the state, though. Yes.
Thank you.
It wasn't part of the scope of the work groups.
Right.
Work groups.
Definitely be a start to revisit. And then in addition, the FCC has a work group right now that is looking at the national issue, because what they have seen, and Chief Trowerneck is right on point, that the number of PSAPs, because there are so many, it does cause more transfers. And so the FCC has taken this on with their work group, and what they have said that they're going to give each of the states is an actual tool to help define what would be the right PSAP for you. So they're not going to go out and tell you what's the right thing. They're going to give you a tool to start making those decisions. So we should expect to see that in September.
Could we send that report that was accepted by the board a few years back out to the board members again so that they have that?
Yes, we'll be able to get that back out to the board. I'm getting nods as well. Okay, is there further discussion?
I guess where do we go from here? And sorry, were you going to comment?
We'll have a public comment when we're done discussing at the
I
board.
mean, I was going to make a recommendation on where we go forward from here with this document, and if you're ready to hear that.
Let's get some public comment. And then I also wanted to respond. You were asking what would be the state's process after this. What my recommendation is, based on what the board's decision today, is to go back and put the state's process in writing, so there is no confusion of what the state process is. We'll have it documented in writing, and then we'll get it back to the board. Okay. State your name and who you're with.
Good morning. Kim Zagareth, State Fire and Rescue Chief for the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. I think all of you actually represent organizations here to really provide direction, not only for your groups, but ultimately back to the state. I think that as you sit there, and I have a number of conversations with most of the fire side of the house, and I know that Chief Payson, representing law enforcement mutual aid for our side of the house, talks back and forth both to the sheriffs as well as to the police chiefs. I think that as we watch technology, we watch the dollars, and I think you're probably all well aware of there's got to be changes if we're going to meet tomorrow's needs and how we do it collectively. And I think the conversations about how many PSAPs we have, how we operate, and how we do business is going to be really most crucial. In my 38 years, I'm always amazed every time we turn the corner. The next issue that hits us, probably like some of you sitting here, but I think it's going to take some very strong leadership from all of our organizations to really get to that next point, to what we want the future to look like and how we're going to operate into the next millennium. And I think it's a tough onion to peel back, but I think the hard conversations, as Chief Trowerneck sits there, is probably the place we really need to go. I have them in private with the fire service leadership, but I think it's a good time to start having those conversations publicly, because they're going to be very painful for some organizations to get to that next level.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay, so do I have a motion from the board on the direction you'd like to take with this document?
Well, I was going to suggest this document came from a meeting that we had with a vendor day, if you all recall, back at the APCO conference. And I think the work group was to go back and, we listened to some vendors, but we realized at the time that we didn't really have a good scope of work. So correct me if I'm wrong if you don't agree. But so I think we're at a point now where we have a scope of work that the process, I guess, is unclear, like how do vendors pick. But I believe after the vendor day, there were two clear vendors that came out that we felt had a good product but needed further examination. So my suggestion is that this scope of work go out to the vendors, that they have a time period that they do their work. They come back to the working group with their solutions. That working group then goes back to Long Range Planning Committee with their recommendations, and then that comes back to the advisory board at our next meeting.
My only concern and comment on that is that we have to follow state process and rules, and so we have to go through our procurement process. I mean, we don't have a choice at the state level. So what I want to do is put that in writing so everybody has what the process is, and then we can go from there. But until I could probably talk through it today. I certainly don't want to leave anything out and cause any confusion, which is why I want to provide this in writing.
I agree. I think less confusion, the better, for sure. Is that included if there's no cost involved in this? If a vendor doesn't, there's no budget, so the vendor wouldn't have an option paid, or is it still the same process?
I would have to go back and check, but I can tell you from my experience, to ensure that we do due diligence, tough word to say today, and to make sure that we have a level playing ground, we set it out as a formal document to make sure there isn't someone else out there that may have missed vendor day or have come up with a solution now. So we always, with or without money, we make sure that we provide everybody the opportunity. So, but I'll go back and get the process.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember what our role is, which is to come up with requirements, possibly be part of the assessment process, but this should be completely agnostic and it goes through the state process. Unlike a recent newspaper article, we don't write or enter into contracts as this board. So I think it's important that we maintain an objective stance on this, and there may be multiple companies. It may not be just the two vendors that we looked at recently in April, but there may be other vendors out there that can provide a solution and meet the requirements that we put out there. So we want to make sure it's a fair and objective process and that the analysis is done completely objectively, and hopefully there's a role for the advisory board and the Long Range Planning Committee to assess the responses.
I guess the other comment I have is looking at this I think it would be helpful to understand what the current ECATs provider, what requirements they meet as far as the big picture goes with this, and where the gaps are. Because I think it's how do we fill the gaps that we currently have so that we can have all the data, have all the tools that we need to actually make the best choices for the public. And I think that's kind of part of the puzzle. If we've already under contract and receiving a number of these services, it's where are the gaps, where are the holes we need to fix so that we can actually get a complete solution to address that. And whether that's adding additional vendors or other folks come out with new technologies, I think ultimately it's having the right tools in our toolbox so that we can, as easily and quickly as possible, make the best routing decisions for the public.
Any other comments? And I do agree with Chief Howland. We just received this document at the same time the board did, so it would require our 911 office to go back and do the comparison of what's included in our current contract and what is not. So that could be an option that we go down that path as well, but that's something that you guys would need to provide input on.
Well, I think that's a great idea, and I think I agree with who's out there. My concern only is timing. Are we going to be 3 months, 6 months down the road and still talking about it? So I think your office will do the work, and we can go from there. But is it possible before the next advisory board meeting through emails or something to keep us updated on where we're at?
all information will be made public. And so if the LRPC is meeting in October, that's an option. We always have an option to have LRPC meetings, prior to October. Since we just got this, it's very difficult to say if, I don't want to jam them up and say, oh, we'll have it done in a week, because I don't know that we can. So we really need to go back and look at this and then work through, I would say, the LRPC like we've done in the past. That would be, something I would be recommending that you guys provide input, whatever you think.
I'd make a motion that we accept the scope of work from the LRPC and I'd give it to the 911 office to move forward.
Second? Further discussion?
Bonner, second.
Any additional discussion? Public comment before we vote? Okay. Paul, if you can go down the roll for voting.
Will do. Chief Scott Howland.
Aye.
Charles Burdan.
Aye.
Charles Cullen. Aye. Sheriff Edward Bonner.
Aye.
Chief Nathan Charnett.
Aye.
Leslie Wilson.
Aye.
Chief Michael Langston.
Aye.
Chief David Wilson.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is reports. So the first report on the agenda is the California 911 branch. Bill Anderson.
Good morning, everyone. See if I can't change subject here for a few minutes. We've been talking about wireless routing quite a bit this morning. Go back over basically the standard report we do at every advisory board. Of course, first thing is the handouts you receive. The first is the status of active tasks. As we always do, we remind you to look them over, see if there's any changes or additions to be made to that. If they are, please direct your comments or questions, concerns to Paul DeMay, and he'll correct that. Second handout you have is the PSAP wireless deployment status. And if you'll notice, we're down to 8 PSAPs now that are not taking the wireless calls. So over the past year and a half, 2 years, we've seen a decrease from approximately 12 down to 8. So we are seeing progress there. A couple meetings ago, we were asked to provide information on why PSAPs aren't taking them. So I think as we get down more and more, we're really looking at readiness and willingness of PSAPs and their ability to take these calls. So I don't know if we've hit a point where we're going to see a little bit slower progression in PSAPs taking their calls. Third handout that's been discussed a little bit, of course, is the Setna Fund, which we discuss at every meeting. And as you can see, and I believe it was Mr. Burdan pointed out, that if the Setna continues on its current trend, approximately end of fiscal year 16-17, we will go into the red. That can fluctuate a little bit based on expenditures during the year. So it is something we are watching very closely right now. That is our funding source for 911 in California. It was discussed, AB 510. We're going to be watching that very closely and its progression in the final language and how it may hopefully help resolve the issue. And as Karen mentioned, internally, we're going to be working to assist in making sure that legislation is proper. Also, as a branch, we have to make sure we watch expenditures against the Setna very closely right now. So as we're looking forward new projects and things like that, we have to make sure that those projects really meet the need of 911 and not burden the fund with unnecessary expenditures. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing over the next 18 months or so until we can get the Setna issue resolved. Going on to the projects, we've talked about the projects going on within 911 branch. Just an update, the Pasadena Marine project. Last time we had 4 light PSAPs. Verdugo, Pasadena, Burbank, and Glendale. They were in phase 1 of connecting to the host. During testing, we did run into some issues where we had the trunk locking up. Our vendor, AT&T, has resolved that. So we'll be moving forward with bringing on the remainder of the PSAPs, which will be Alhambra, Beverly Hills, Sierra Madre, and San Fernando shortly. Those are being scheduled. We still look to have that ESI net turned up toward the end of this year, early part of next calendar year. Mendocino, the other ESI net project, has all of its PSAPs on the hosted solution right now, and we'll be looking for the cutover to the ESI net approximately the same time that the Pasadena Ring project goes. The third project we're working on is proof of concept. We've talked many times now about the Northeast Grant project, which was designed to look at the ability to route based on a person's location. That project has been very successful. It still continues. It was through work with Verizon. We are now doing the proof of concept in the Ventura area with AT&T to see if one of the other major vendors can do the same ability and provide us with information where we can route on a location-based accuracy. Keep in mind this only affects phase 2 calls, not phase 1 calls, which we all know the percentage of phase 2 versus phase 1 is low. So it's only those calls. So that is still being worked on. We did have a little delay in getting some circuits installed. However, they plan on doing a trial run on August 20th, and they should be doing a demonstration for our branch approximately September 2nd right now. Text to 911. That is moving forward. In June 23rd, 24th, we started doing rollouts in San Bernardino County, 8 initial PSAPs. Our initial work is with Verizon right now. During the initial test, we discovered we had a transfer issue. Basically, we'd make a transfer. It says the transfer was successful, but we couldn't confirm the transfer got through. So that's an issue that TCS, who was our TCC, and Verizon are working together to solve. They do believe they have an issue or a resolution for that. TCS is expecting to have that fix in place by September 16th, and we'll be moving forward with bringing up the remainder of the carriers and the remainder of the PSAPs, so we'll put it at 29 by the end of this year. We're hoping to get that all taken care of by October, actually. So we continue to move forward with text to 911. I know Ms. Wilson had asked for a report on the issues with text to 911. I think it's probably will be doing it to one of the later advisory boards. Education awareness program is pretty much done. We should have the final report at the end of this month, and that'll close that project out. It was a very successful program in its respect as far as educating the public on certain issues with 911, that of course being location and not making frivolous 911 calls to a PSAP. So we will continue to support that program, not the way it has been, but providing information out to the PSAPs upon request, and also looking forward at other ways we can work in informing the public and PSAPs on the utilization of 911. And one project that we've talked about, and I'm finally happy to say, is the Next Gen 911 transition plan. In June, we were able to sign our contract with L.R. Kimball, who is a well-known nationwide vendor as far as developing next generation 911 systems. We've had our initial kickoff meeting with them. We are currently developing our transition plan. So over the next 2 years, we'll be looking to develop the plan to start rolling out next gen 911 for California. So that is going to happen. And of course, the other project that we have been working on a lot with the PSAPs and the county coordinators and CHP, which has been the main point of discussion this morning, is wireless routing. For quite a while now, we have been working with the PSAPs and the county coordinators. So it's not something that just started after the director's letter came out, and working with our contractor, Direct Technologies, who provides ECATs reports. One of the nice things about the contract we have with them is we have development time built into that contract. It allows us to develop additional reports, additional processes we can use to provide information out to the PSAPs, not just the standard CDR records. And this is done at no additional expense to the Setna account. It's all included within the monthly cost we pay with ECATs. And with the discussion over wireless routing over the past year and a half, our branch has taken the initiative to start working with them to start providing reports out to the county coordinators and the PSAPs. At the, I believe it was the May meeting in Irvine, when I did my presentation, I went over some of those reports and showed what they look like. CHP has been very aggressive in using those reports, particularly the wireless transfer summary, to look and make recommendations on transferring cell sectors that we believe are not correctly being routed properly. Now, keep in mind, too, that the wireless transfer summary report is not the only thing you look at. As I think Mr. Wilson pointed out, it's more than just that. You have to look at the visualization. And with every wireless transfer summary report, there is a visualization process with that. You can hit a button, it shows the distribution of calls, and those are the things you need to really make those decisions. I think we all agree over a period of time, you need to take a look at where the calls came from and what jurisdiction they rely in and make some decisions. And it's not as simple as saying, here's some data, make a decision. It's a collaborative effort. It requires discussion among the PSAPs, the county coordinators, and looking at the information presented to make that decision. It's not that simple. It's not, you have to look at the PSAP readiness, PSAP willingness, and there's also government code too that plays an impact in that. So all those things have to be taken into, and CHP has been very good in using the tools that are currently there and developing processes to move forward. Currently, in response, and keep in mind, this has been going on before the director's letter came out. We currently have 17 counties that have completed their assessment of wireless routing. With that, we have looked at looked at 2,497 sectors within those counties, and currently we are looking to low-hanging fruit. And out of that, we have made recommendations for transfers of 122 sectors, which is about 4.8% of the total sectors we have looked at. That does include CHP. I do not have their numbers right now. But what it does show is that process is working. We are making progress right now, and I understand we're still looking at the statement of work, but there are things being done right now at this point in time to assist with the issue we have of wireless routing in California. So that essentially is my report today, short and sweet and to the point. And no, I'm not done.
The call that went to Canada.
Oh, I thought that was going to be a different report.
Nope.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
do you have a different report?
I have it. Well,
I only see you on here one time.
Okay,
Sorry, Bill.
I can do that right now.
But before we move on, do you guys have comments on anything so far on the report out?
I just want to, you'd mentioned the CHP, and I want to thank the 911 office for your additional tools because it's been very valuable. My staff has been working really hard, and I know the questions came up with resources on getting the project done, the training to use the tool, and those types of things. And it's one of the things I want to put out to the board of, as well as the 911 office, but my staff knows the tool very well. And as example, Michelle's actually trained 29 of the 58 county coordinators already on use of that tool, and is willing to help out the rest of them. And so it's one of those things. And I think it goes back to this whole issue is collaborative. And we've got to make sure we're all working together on it. And I've used the term before that emergency response is a team sport, that every call is a little bit different. And we know that the 911 calls comes into a PSAP, and whether it's your call or someone else's call, it's who else do I need to come and deal with whatever the emergency is. And sometimes it's purely a fire call, sometimes it's purely a law enforcement call, but many times we need everybody there. We need law enforcement, we need fire, we need medical, and a bunch of other folks with that. And I think as we've been going through this process and reaching out to the county coordinators and really looking at the data, the criteria that was sent out is one of those things that we can really make an impact with low-hanging fruit from that standpoint, and really get those call sectors that have a significant issue that need to be addressed, get those addressed right away. And then as we further go on down, we can reach further in the weeds and identify additional sectors that need to do. Some of them are very easy. 80% call rate to one agency, that's a simple decision. Others get more complex where you got to put it on a map and try and figure it out. And I know Chief McElroy, we were talking earlier, there's a few in Santa Barbara that we're going to sit down and talk about and try and figure out that it's not as simple as a percentage. Some may be, others are, we have to sit down and really understand the calls, really understand where the calls come from. And it's been interesting going through the process. We've even identified some. We had a sector in Vallejo that when you look at the map, the only thing the sector covered was the freeway. And so when it was routed to cover the freeway. Well, when we ran our reports, we found a high transfer rate. And when we looked at the calls and plotted the map, most of the calls were coming from the city, not within the sector map that we had from the carrier. Our recommendation, transfer to the city, because that's where the calls were coming from. But it's been a very informative process, and it's nice to have an additional tool. It's not the end all, and Bill, as you said, transfer rate doesn't tell the whole story. You got to plot them and really understand those calls. Some are very easy. The Vallejo one, once we plotted the calls, it was really, really easy. Other ones where we have 5 jurisdictions, it gets a little more complex to really figure that out. But I think the other thing, and I don't know if this would be the right time, but maybe during public comment, is I'd be interested to hear from our other partner that we don't hear from much, and that's our carriers. because I can sit down with any jurisdiction, we can figure out where it needs to go, and I'm going to use the example Chief McElroy brought up, is a call sector in Santa Barbara County that should have been cut over that wasn't, that we identified again and made the request to cut over, and we were told by our carrier that it was done. And it was found out that it was not done. And our other partners that really need to step up to the plate, and we've kind of talked about that a little bit, is I think our carriers. Because we can make all the recommendations in the world, but if our carriers don't change that call routing, nothing's changed. And so I'd like to hear from the carriers their perspective of how we get those call routing changes done and done quickly, because ultimately we are all in this to make sure that the best interest of the public is taken care of. And I can identify through an easy report or complex roll up our sleeves and have discussions and figure out how we do it, but if the carriers don't make that change, we haven't solved anything. And they're of vital importance and one of the team players, because it's the carriers, the PSAPs, and all the first responders working together to make this successful. And then the other thing is I want to make sure that, as I said before, if folks need help, I've got a great staff that's willing to help anybody with that, and I want to make sure we sit down and have those conversations about those routing calls. It's interesting because it seems like most of the conversation is CHP versus another PSAP, but we're finding out that looking at the data, there's a lot of PSAP, non-CHP that need to be rerouted and looked at as well. And it's interesting, we found quite a few sectors that we've rerouted that go from us to another PSAP, but we also found many that should be coming to us to lower those transfer rates and make sure that the calls go to the PSAP that needs to be there. So again, anybody who needs assistance with that, we're more than happy to provide that.
Thank you, Chief. And just a couple last-minute follow-ons to that. In addition to with the work Michelle's done in training, we've also, in June, we had the county coordinators meeting in Sacramento. Our contractor, Direct Technologies, came out and did a presentation for them so they understand all the tools that are available to them. And just this last week, we did a webinar with my staff and CHP staff to make sure all county coordinators, who are really going to be doing a lot of this work, understand the process that was developed, so everybody's working off the same page and doing their evaluations of their sectors throughout California. And also, I need to make it clear, too, that we're not naive enough to believe that the tools that we've developed are the only tools. These are not static. We know over time we're going to develop additions to these tools, add to them to make them better. I know we've had questions about that, and those are things as they do come up, we're going to take a look at those, talk to our contractor right now. As I said, we're in a unique position right now because we do not have to expend extra money to make additions to this. We can use it within costs that we spend every month, so that's truly a benefit to us. To move on to the next topic, as Karen brought up, Delano. I'm not sure if everybody is aware of the incident that happened in Delano. Occurred January 26th of 2014. Delano uses a PBX on a VoIP system, and those are becoming very, very much more used by the public, by businesses. The problem is they don't operate the same as a traditional landline telephone system do. So what had happened is a young man during PE class collapsed, needed medical assistance. The district made a call under PBX with the expectation that it would go to the local 911 PSAP. It didn't. It was transferred to a secondary answering service that is used by VoIP systems in Canada called Northern 911. It's the backup in case the 911 fails. Northern 911 in turn had to get the number, which in this case was a 10-digit administration line, call down to Delano PD, which at that time they received a automated recording, which they then had to press the number 1. They finally got through to a contact. It went to the dispatcher, which they then forwarded out to the fire department. Unfortunately, the young man passed away from what we understand with natural causes. But the underlying theme here is with VoIP now, we need to really start taking a look at educating not only the PSAPs and the public on how VoIP works, because these situations do exist. With a VoIP phone, you can pick it up and you can go anywhere you want to, plug it back in again. The problem is when you make the call, it registers you where that phone was. So you can go down the street, around the corner, and it's going to say you're at that location, and that becomes an issue. When we did the review, we did contact the service provider, the VoIP service provider, Jive, and we also talked to the VoIP Positioning Center, which is bandwidth, it supports Jive. So we made sure we had all our information correct. The one thing we did find out is the system was provisioned correctly. It was designed that if you do make a 911 call, it does take that call and send it to the local PSAP. They have 5 PANIs they use, which essentially defines the ESN number for that PSAP. Those were tested between November 2013 to February of 2015, and there was a number of 911 emergency calls made during that time that were successful getting to the PSAP. It just so happened on this one particular call, when it went through, there was an issue with the backhaul from the VoIP Positioning Center. That forced it into the backup mode. It sent it to Northern California or Northern 911 and back again. So it wasn't an issue with provision. It was an issue within the network. There's also there's actually 2 emergency call routing centers, as is referred to. One's Northern 911 in Canada, and one is in Toronto, which is in Englewood, Colorado. So the issues we see right now is the FCC regulates VoIP, and they do require that all VoIP providers provision their systems to send their calls to a 911. However, they do not control the emergency call routing centers. Those are provided by the VoIP positioning centers and the service providers as a service. So that is not regulated by the FCC in this case. What we're finding is PSAPs are really not educated at this point on how VoIP systems work. They know what VoIP systems are, but they don't know the process that a VoIP call goes through. To some extent, it follows the same process that we see with a regular wireless call. The call comes in, it goes to the VoIP positioning center, it provides the PANI, it comes back again, grabs the information and sends it back to the PSAP, and they know where the address was. In some cases, the number that goes for the PSAP is not the 10-digit emergency number. It's an admin line, which becomes problematic. In this case, they had a recorded message. This could have been one of those recorded messages where you have to go through 4 or 5 menu items until you finally get to the person you want to talk to. And sometimes you don't even get to the person, you get to another automated message. So that is an issue we have to look at. We know some PSAPs don't have a 10-digit emergency number. They only have a 7, 10-digit admin line, which causes a problem. In some cases, the VoIP Positioning Center or the Emergency Call Routing Center don't have accurate, up-to-date numbers for the PSAPs that they have to respond to. So those are the issues that we're seeing with VoIP at this point in time. So what will be done, and I don't say can, but what will be done, is our office, as the 911 office, has to take the lead in this and move forward with this. So we'll be working with the PSAPs and the VoIP service providers to develop processes to assist the PSAP. So when they set up these systems, when they provision the systems, they do make test calls. They verify up front that when you put these systems in, they work with the PSAP, they make sure those calls can get through. It's not just done or assumed that that call is going to get through. We're going to be working to develop a process to ensure that there's a provision additional, maybe a secondary 911, that if you can't get through to the local PSAP, there's a secondary PSAP they can get to, so at least there's local 911 emergency services that will be available to them. In some cases, if it's close, then we could probably transfer that call through the selective router. We'll sit in education at the PSAPs. Part of this is we have information on the internet right now, pamphlets and stuff like that's available to the PSAPs. We want to make sure those are updated with the issues and concerns with VoIP, and those that are provided to the PSAPs. And we're also going to make sure we do some webinars, get the PSAPs online so we can talk to them. We can go through this whole process of how VoIP works, what the issues are, things you need to do when VoIP systems be put in place, and that you need to make time. We understand PSAPs are very, very busy. We know that. But there still needs to be that time made to work with that VoIP provider to make sure that call gets the transfer it should get when that emergency call comes through. So, questions on the Delano incident?
Quick question. Any idea how big the scope is as far as the VoIP potential out there? Because I see a lot of businesses are transitioning to VoIP. You see all the ads for, I can do it at home and all the different things. It seems like, landline was the one thing that we knew where they were, rock solid. And that's even changing on us from the standpoint of any idea how big the scope is?
I don't know offhand, Chief. I would assume whatever we see now is going to grow in the future because, as you said, many people are now transferring to VoIP-type services for their primary communications or landline communications. So I would expect this issue to become more prevalent in the future. So it is something we need to address now.
I think the educational piece is critical for the dispatchers, but the public as well, and businesses, that they understand that those systems need to be provisioned, tested, and we do need to look at an alternative to what's being done today as far as a default
I
dispatch
agree.
center. That was just unbelievable.
Yeah. There is information out there. I know the FCC has pamphlets out there in regards to VoIP. We have information on it. Whether or not that knowledge has gotten out to the people who need it probably has, well, obviously has not in this case. Yes, so it's something we need to work on and make sure that they know it's there and they can refer to that in the future.
I think the main problem, using Vonage and stuff from a residential isn't as big an issue as these school districts and large businesses that are going to avoid VoIP systems that are really the problem. Something that honestly shocked me yesterday, my mother added UVerse to her phone system, and the salesperson signed her up for VoIP through AT&T. They wanted to change her landline phone to a VoIP phone, AT&T. And she, 90 years old, she didn't understand what they were asking her to do. When the phone guy got there, I was there, and he said, okay, we're going to move you to VoIP, take off your POTS line. And I said, no. Otherwise, she'd have been on VoIP. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, how that is provisioned for 911. I didn't even think to ask.
And I think that's part of the problem with VoIP. I think people don't know to ask. Yes. And it sounds like it's really easy. So if you change your residence, you just take it with you, and it's complicated. But I do believe public outreach needs to happen.
Thank you.
Any further comments for Bill before he walks away? I'm teasing. Okay, next on the list is the Long Range Planning Committee. Ms. Herron, thank you.
Actually, I do have a couple of items for you. Obviously, the scope of work and the wireless routing has been the main issue that we've been working on, but just want to cover a couple of things. First is just the tasks that the LRPC has on the list. Make sure that we've got, that the advisory board agrees that these are the items that you want the LRPC to be working on at future meetings. Certainly the follow-up, as discussed today, to the scope of work and the wireless routing project, the consolidation, and I know I'll work with Paul to make sure that we get the FCC and advisory board reports that Leslie mentioned, so that we can review those to perhaps start down that path. Also on the list, this is actually on the task list that you have in your packet today, this strategic plan and next-gen roadmap review, although that's really on hold until we get the consultant's report that's expected in the fourth quarter. So that may be something that gets revisited here at one of the upcoming meetings. And then the last thing, and I'll try not to steal too much of Tracy's thunder with the CCTF report, but as you'll recall, prior to the wireless routing issue coming up and really taking all of our time, we had started to work with the CCTF on trying to define the expectations and role of the county coordinator. And we had a little bit of discussion yesterday, and again, I think Tracy will talk about some of the things they're doing, and I think where we ended up is what we'd like to work with them on is putting together a packet, an education piece that can go out to all of the PSAPs, all of the sheriffs, all of the police chiefs, that really outlines this is what a county coordinator can and should be doing. These are the resources that county coordinators have so that they can do the job that they should be doing, so that way, if there are instances where that's not happening, we've educated hopefully everyone involved in the PSAP community. And, if it's a police chief who isn't receiving the support that they think they should from their county coordinator, they can reach out to what is typically the sheriff. Most of the county coordinators work for the sheriffs, although not all. They can reach out and say, hey, here's the expectations. Can we get together and talk about this and find a way to get the support we need? So those are the items that we've got on the list, barring any other direction. Last thing is, as you know, have been the chair of the LRPC as Sheriff Bonner's designee. His designee is going to be changing after today's meeting. I don't work for the Placer County Sheriff's Office anymore. Paul, where are you? Paul Troxel has taken my position there. So with that, we don't want to throw Paul to the wolves right away, and so just would ask that the advisory board, our recommendation is to appoint Charlie Cullen as the chairperson of the LRPC. And I think that we need a roll call vote, Paul, for that. So again, any other questions or direction for the LRPC? If not, I would ask that you do a vote appointing Charlie as the chairperson.
Any questions and comments? And do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Howland will second.
Okay, roll call vote, Paul.
Aye.
Aye.
Charles Cullen?
I have to abstain on this one.
Oh, that's great. Sheriff Edward Bonner.
Aye, aye.
Chief Nathan Charnick.
Aye.
Leslie Wilson.
Aye.
Chief Michael Langston.
Aye.
Chief David Wilson.
Aye.
Okay. Charlie Cullen is the new chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just say something a little bit, Chris Herron has done an outstanding job and will be big shoes to fill. He's kept the group focused, on task, has been a great representative in front of this body, talking about the issues and working through them with the Long Range Planning Commission. So it will be really big shoes to fill, and hopefully we'll see Chris back here in some capacity very soon. So thanks for all your work, Chris. Great job.
And I echo the comments. Chris, you've been a real help in pushing information and issues forward to the board, so we really appreciate that. Okay. Next item, County Coordinator Task Force, Tracy Kessler.
Good morning. The CCTF recently held our first face-to-face meeting in June of 2015 at the State 911 office in Sacramento. Because we're now fully staffed, we were able to review the responses from the county coordinator survey that was conducted last year and determine a path forward to use those results to benefit our fellow county coordinators. It was decided that each CCTF member would act as a resource and be assigned to each county coordinator that indicated on the survey that they would welcome such support. And it was also determined that the CCTF would establish a mentoring program for new county coordinators. So as new county coordinators come on board, they will be partnered with one of the seasoned CCTF members to act as a resource and provide support and direction as necessary while they're learning their duties. So each CCTF member will reach out once they find the new county coordinator and assign to them, give them resources such as the operations manual, the reference guide, websites, and reimbursement forms and that sort of thing. We also started a monthly training webinar program. It's being trialed to determine if it's a viable method for future county coordinator training. We had our first session on the 11th of August, which, as Bill said, was the wireless routing summary report training. It was a webinar, so everybody could ask questions and see how that looked. Alicia and Jordan Elliston from ECATs led that, and it was good training. So this trial on other training will run through January 2016, then we'll assess that for its effectiveness in place of the month or the bi-yearly forums as people have trouble traveling and getting overnight stays and that sort of thing. So we're looking at that as a replacement for that. That's it.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I'd just like to thank Tracy for all the work that the County Coordinator Task Force has done, and they're going to be a critical role moving forward with monitoring and the analysis and helping the PSAP with all these issues that we've discussed. And they've done a great job in getting people on board, and it's been one of my issues that I see as a critical piece of this whole component, making sure that we have that information or sharing that information, and there are people to go to, really.
And I want to echo those comments and pass on my appreciation, because I know my staff has worked very closely with all our county coordinators, and it's a vital, and again, it's a team effort. And I got to say, they've been fantastic and been really good with the dialogue and sharing information and making some really good decisions that are in the best interest of the public. So from your perspective, if you'll please pass on our thanks, because I know it's a lot of work.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much for all your hard work. Any additional comments? Okay, we'll go to the next item, which is the California First Responder Network Board of Directors FirstNet update by Sue Plants.
Hi, good morning. The California Governor's Office, in coordination with the Federal FirstNet Authority, had a really successful initial state consultation in July, and it was a 2.5-day event. And I have to tell you, the energy and just the discussions throughout that whole venue was just really eye-opening. And I really appreciate some of the members on the advisory panel, or the advisory board, that are also on our CalFriend board, that participated as panel members and moderators, and it was really a terrific event. We had nearly 200 attendees representing across section of California public safety, including fire, law, emergency medical, utilities, 911, and we actually had 16 tribal chair members there, which is unheard of. We actually are now looked at as a nationwide benchmark for other states to have their tribal members participate. There was a lot of insight challenges that were brought forward to FirstNet. They were very appreciative. They had a very high level representation. They had Kevin McGinnis, who is a first board member and also tribal liaison. They had Dave Buchanan, who's director of state consultation, and they had Rich Reed, who is the director of state plans. FirstNet went through what they're looking for as far as data collection and the information they need to continue to finish their request for proposal to build this nationwide broadband network. And so they actually gave a lot of information out to our participants and our stakeholders that attended, and they had a better understanding of what FirstNet is and why the data collection is very important. Our office just sent out a request on a survey, and it's due September 30th back to FirstNet so that they can proceed with correct information from the states to give to the vendor community to go ahead and get the RFP process finished. Just again, I think that the members that were there in the participation really showed that the rural coverage and the tribal coverage is really important to California. And so when we get these surveys back, it'll help California prioritize the information to give it back to FirstNet. And again, we appreciate the assistance in pushing out our data survey to get this information to FirstNet. Is there any questions?
A quick question for you. I know that the survey is really, really important to the state of California to get as much response, and I know given the different associations that we all represent on the board, it's probably helpful if we take the message back to our associations and reiterate the importance of that survey. Could you give us a snapshot of the information that is being requested so that as we push that back, we can make sure that folks actually respond? Because, you know, one of the takeaways I had from the meeting is the importance of that data, because the more accurate we are, the better plan we're going to end up with.
So what they're looking at is, who are your users today? What is your coverage challenges? What devices are your users using? What do you foresee in the future? And the questionnaire is not that long. I think the main thing is getting all the information from your jurisdictions and your associations, because there's a large number there's over 3,000 public safety entities out there, and that's a lot of users on devices. And so they're really looking for as much as we can where our gaps are in the state, where there isn't coverage, so that they can go out to the vendor community and show where this coverage really needs to be.
And I just want to add to that, we sent a survey out initially regarding FirstNet, and I think we had about 3% response. We can't have a 3% response this time around because they're going to be developing the network needs for California based on this survey. So the survey is extremely important. If any of the board members haven't seen the survey, I know that it was emailed out, your names were on our list. But if you haven't seen it, we will get it out. If you would like a meeting with any one of us to talk about this so you can go back to your associations and send a real strong, clear message, let us know. We really need to respond to this survey. It can't be a 3% response. And somehow we've been really, really fortunate in the 911 community. Every time we send a survey out, we get about 80, 90, am I overstating, percent response. And that's the type of response I want to see from public safety. We need to make our needs known.
Aaron, is that going out through police chiefs, OES, fire chiefs, or all of the above?
All of the above.
Okay.
I think we sent out to 5,000.
I believe so.
Yeah, so we were, and so some people are going to see it twice, but we think that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions there. We're going to move now on to new business. And we have the Tahachchi Public Safety Answering Point. Chief Gruker is here from Tahachchi. Welcome. And this is regards to an appeal to receive a PSAP in Tahachchi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kent Krager, Chief of Police for the City of Tahachchi. I have several city officials who will be contributing to this conversation today. I have our Mayor, Susan Wiggins, Councilman Ed Grimes, and our City Manager, Mr. Greg Garrett. As Ms. Wong stated, we're here to try and convince you that we need to be recognized as a new public safety answering point and receive California 911 branch funding. I recognize that this is going to be an uphill battle with the direction of the 911 system towards consolidating services and reducing the number of PSAPs, but I believe we have a pretty compelling argument for our community to recognize us as a PSAP and provide us that funding. I'd like to first start with just providing you a little bit of background on our city and our department so you can get a kind of a picture of where we are and how we operate up there. The City of Tahachchi is located in Kern County, approximately 35 miles southeast of Bakersfield. We have a population in the city proper of about 14,000 residents. However, we serve a population of approximately 38,000. We have outlying areas with 2 community services districts that are primarily residential. So all of the schools and shopping and everything is located within the city jurisdiction. So we serve approximately 38,000 residents. The Tahachchi Police Department was formed in 2007 with the goal of providing enhanced police services to the residents of our community. This commitment to quality police service was reaffirmed in 2014 when the city constructed and opened a new police headquarters building in the heart of the city. The new building was designed to accommodate a dispatch center to further enhance the level of service provided to our residents. We currently have a staff of 15 sworn officers, 2 professional staff, and 1 code enforcement officer. Over the past 5 years, we've handled about 32,000 calls for service, averaging about 530 calls for service per month. Our calls for service have increased over 5 years about 35%. Dispatch services. We currently contract our dispatch services to Bear Valley Springs Community Service District. They're located about 12 miles outside of the city. The current cost of this contract is about $425,000 a year. Over the past 7 years of this contract, we've had an increase in cost of over 60%, with no increase in the level of service, no increase in staffing. We've been met with repeated refusals to reduce those costs, and we continue to pursue that, and it's still not coming through. The biggest problem, however, is that the quality of service provided by Bear Valley has continued to decline over the years. We believe the safety of our officers was becoming a concern, and the service to our residents was not consistent with our standards. A little bit of history on how we got here today. Based on this decline in service and the increased costs associated with our dispatch services, in 2013, we began an in-depth study to make a determination of whether it was in the best interest of the community for us to pursue having our own dispatch center. The study was completed in 2014, and unequivocally they came forward and said, hey, it is in the best interest of the community for you to begin your own dispatch services. As we began to process establishing our own dispatch center, we discovered that the funding criteria had recently changed, and there was a new component to that requiring documentation indicating that you could support 300 911 calls per month in order to receive that funding. We did an initial analysis of our call volume through our dispatch center, and they came back and indicated that we were receiving about 100 911 calls per month. Based on our calls for service, our total calls for service, and the activity level of our officers, I questioned the validity of these numbers. I didn't believe it was accurate. I thought we were missing a great number of calls based on transfers from CHP, et cetera. And I spoke with Ms. Wong and made a request to have this looked at. I sat down with myself and our city manager, sat down with Mr. Anderson, and he was kind enough to come out and analyze all of the data, and came back and discovered that we were at about 211 calls, still a little bit shy of the 300, but significantly more than the initial analysis. Based on this number, and solely on this number, we were denied PSAP status and denied funding. So that brought us here today to appeal that process and bring forth to you our story of why we believe that this number of just call volume should possibly be overlooked in this instance. We recognize the benefits of consolidating public safety and answering points and the importance of utilizing California 911 branch resources in the most efficient manner possible. It is our belief, however, that the citizens of Tahachpi will receive an improved level of service if we were to be recognized as a new public safety answering point and be granted funding. The factors that I think need to be considered here are we are the only municipal police agency in this area. We have 2 community services districts that operate their own police departments. They are residential areas and residential community only. Bear Valley Springs is a gated residential community, and they were recognized as a PSAP long before these new requirements came in. And they were the ones that were providing that service, and they were the PSAP when we came into business in 2007. City of Tahachpi is a growing community. We have a lot of growth. Our city manager will speak here briefly about the growth that we're experiencing there. And as I mentioned earlier, we've had an increase in calls for service of over 35% in the last 5 years. I'm confident that although we're only at 211 calls, 911 calls per month now, I'm confident based on the growth that we're experiencing now that we're going to eventually, and I think very soon, be at that 300 threshold. We're going to be there. Most importantly, however, is the quality of service that we're getting from our current dispatch center. you guys all know this is frequently the first contact that people have with your agency is that dispatch center. This contact sets the tone for future interactions with our officers, and when you're outsourcing that most critical contact, there are a number of things that occur. One of those is a loss of control and standards. We have very little control or influence over the standards within the dispatch center. The manner in which they interact with our customers, the level of attention they give specific issues that are important to us as a community are lost, and the way they contribute to our policing strategies and philosophies are clearly not consistent with the direction of our department and our city. We lose important feedback opportunities. As you know, in this business, one of our greatest advantages of providing dispatch services is the ability to collect direct feedback from the community. This feedback provides us a valuable tool for improving our service. We're missing this opportunity by not having that initial direct contact. Another issue is we have reduced support for after-hours emergencies. With our dispatch center being located several miles out of the city jurisdictions, citizens do not have the ability to seek refuge or make direct contact with department staff for after-hour emergencies. Our new police headquarters is located in the heart of the city, in the midst of the population, and it was designed and built to be a 24/7 operation. By outsourcing our dispatch services, we're now required to close our doors at 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, and people don't have access to that dispatch center, which is located 12 miles out of town in a rural area behind a locked gate. So we have a complete disconnect with our dispatch. I'd like to invite Susan Wiggins, our mayor, up to speak briefly about the city.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I am the mayor of Tahachchi, and sometimes people think that I have superpowers because of that. And I hear a lot of complaints that don't really apply to me, and there really isn't anything I can do. But I hear complaints all the time at church, in the grocery store, at school, about our 911. They are angry with the way they're treated when they call. The 911 operators have actually said, "Thank you, ma'am, and good night," and not dispatch someone for a non-emergency call. Not everyone, especially older people, know who to call. So they call 911. The call's not transferred. It's not anything. It's just gone. I have had a personal experience with 911 on the day that I lost my husband when I was calling and waiting for it. It took 12 minutes. That wasn't the 911 call fault. But she was very rude, very inconsiderate, and had I not been in the situation I was in, I probably would have taught her how to do a 911 call. But we don't want that. We want compassionate people. We don't want people to say, "Well, I'm not going to call that person anymore because it did nothing." And we really, really want to be able to network and be able to say that everyone within our city network has the same goals, like Chief was saying, with community policing. The first person you talk to, you want them to be a kind and compassionate person. In my past life, when I worked for a school district, I'm also on the school law enforcement partnership, and I do trainings in school districts for safe schools. So I understand interacting with people. You want safe schools, you train them on crisis, all these different things. You want that school, whether they have VoIP or not, to be able to reach someone who can be compassionate, who's trained, who knows what's the protocol for this right now, active shooter on campus, whatever it is. You want them to be able to know in an instant what to do and not take the call and hang up and not call anybody. So that's one of our major concerns, is we want people there quickly. We want people there who are able, fire, police, CHP, whatever, and we want them to know where to send them. We have times where I see a fire truck go through my neighborhood, code 3, and then I see the fire truck turn around, and they're lost. They haven't been given the right address by 911, and that's not a good situation either. So I really urge you to consider this for us. Thank you.
Councilman Ed Grimes.
Good morning. My name is Ed Grimes. I'm a city council member with the city of Tahachchi. I'm past mayor, and I'm also a retired state parole agent. I'm also somewhat considered a historian, if you will, of Tahachchi. I've been there for almost 70 years. I've seen it grow from about 1,500 people to almost 40,000. Quite a growth. I used to drive across the Tahachchi Valley at 10 years old in my dad's Jeep. Boy, I wouldn't let my 10-year-old do that now, but I did. But you know, that's what we're talking about is growth, and Tahachchi is certainly in that growth mode. We're a very proud city, if you will. We built this brand new police department that's kind of the state of the art, that's ready for dispatch. But we really, really do need that 911. When you have to depend on a CSD that has a private police department, it makes it very difficult at times. And therefore, you know, I'm asking that you reconsider. You know, with the AB 109, Proposition 47, we're seeing more of the criminal element creep into our nice little city. We also have a major prison within the community of almost 4,500 people who on a daily basis will parole people. And so I would just ask that you reconsider our request and approve the 911 situation for us. Thank you.
And lastly, City Manager Greg Garrett to speak a little bit to the growth of the city.
Good morning. Thank you for hosting us this morning. What a meeting to come to ask to be recognized as a 911 PSAP system, right? And the nice thing about going last, I suppose, is everything has been said and said very well. We just ask for your consideration. Had we applied, you know, just a day before the April 2014 timeline, we would have been granted this status, but unfortunately we fell right after that. Again, our department, you know, we spent almost $5 million on this building. We designed it and built it with the intent of putting in our own dispatch. We do believe in local control. We think it's very important, and we ask for your consideration. We're here for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Are there questions and comments from the board?
I have a question. Chief, is the 4,500 prisoners that part of your population?
That is correct, sir, yes.
Is the, what's the funding amount, and how would that help if you were approved?
Well, the 911 piece of the equipment is approximately $158,000 is my understanding of that. And that would help significantly if we were to obtain that piece of the funding, because as you know, there are several other components to that beyond the 911 equipment itself. Probably another $300,000 in addition to that, plus personnel cost benefits and things like that. So even if we were to obtain the funding from the California 911 branch, we still have a substantial portion that we have to absorb ourselves in the city.
And just so I understand, aside from if you didn't have the funding, would you still be able to operate a PSAP, or you have to have the approval of the state 911 to even operate the PSAP?
It's going to be a challenge. My understanding is we can operate it. We would just have to fund the entire operation ourselves. And you know, as you know, when you're doing that and you're taking on a big project like that, the cost is important. But I think the bigger picture here, and for us, is the quality of service. I think we are willing to put cost aside and sacrifice what it costs in order to get a better quality of service for our citizens, because we're just not getting the standard of service that they deserve right now.
And I can appreciate that. Aside from the comments about consolidation of PSAPs, bigger is not always better. And many of our communities consolidated and formed and developed their own services for this very reason. They wanted to provide a much better service. So I would certainly support this proposition. I guess my question is, what is the ability of this board to influence that process?
This is the process that we go through, and honestly, this is the first one we've done since I've been here, so this is kind of new for me. But we would get the advice of the board, and then we would run it through our chain through Cal OES. But we would need the advice of the board on which way to go. So we're looking for that advice.
Chief, a couple of quick questions. Fire services, is there a fire dispatch, like a regional fire dispatch center? So if a call comes into Bear Valley, it's transferred to a fire dispatch center?
It gets transferred to Kern County Fire Dispatch Center. And, you know, one of the things that we discovered when we were first analyzing our data, a lot of our wireless calls were going to Bishop CHP. And Mr. Anderson discovered a lot of those were being transferred via 10-digit line. So they weren't being captured as 911 calls. He was kind enough when he came out and looked at that data to actually to credit us with those as 911 calls. So, you know, it's a complicated deal out there, and, you know, Bishop's 200 miles away from us. So.
And then do you have a service area outside of the city limits itself? I think you mentioned that you provide police services outside.
We do. We were asked about the prison population. We do provide service to the prison, which is outside of our city jurisdiction. The city is, the prison's about 12 miles away from the city that we provide service out there as well.
And I guess my last question is, have you talked to the Kern County SO about dispatch services at all?
Yes, we did, and they currently don't have the resources or the ability to dispatch for us out of the Tahachchi substation. They provide services to one of the CSDs, which is Stallion Springs Police Department, and that was taxing enough on their resources. And quite honestly, we have the most calls for services they're within the city. So we have more than what Kern County Sheriff has. We have more than all the 3 other agencies combined that occur within the city. So we are the hot spot, so to speak. So for them to provide that service for us would be really, they'd have to really significantly increase the number of resources in their dispatch center.
Chief, did you talk to them about dispatching for them?
For Bear Valley?
For Bear Valley, for
yes,
the
sir.
sheriff?
There's been discussions about that, and it's a rather complicated issue. We've had, over the years, we've had Bear Valley Police Department actually express to us a desire to lower these costs. However, the Community Service District Board refuses to go along with that recommendation. And I hate to say it, but it's a moneymaker for them right now. They're making money off of us, and we are financing, in my opinion, we are financing their entire dispatch operation. So for them to lose us would be devastating to their operation there. So I think you make a good point, sir, because to me, that is the most appropriate, is a role reversal here, is that the municipal police agency should be providing dispatch services for the community service district that has lesser call volume, and it's just a residential community.
But politically, it's just not.
It's a little challenging politically. They are the community services district that we're dealing with, sir, is very independent, and it's very challenging.
I have a question. Is there an opportunity with Bakersfield PD, and what's the redundancy there as far as backups? Who is the backup for your current dispatch center? And what would that look like?
The backup for our current dispatch center is Kern County Sheriff, and I don't believe there's a possibility with Bakersfield PD. And again, they're probably 35 miles away from us, and we haven't discussed it with Bakersfield, but I mean, they've got a pretty large area that they're covering, and I don't know if they even have the ability to dispatch for us.
Because consolidation there's a lot of different ways to look at consolidation. There's opportunities with these next-gen phone systems of sharing off of a phone system. I don't know what process any of the PSAPs are in, but to share or have a hosted solution, to go down that path and look at some of those opportunities, maybe with the Bakersfield or some of the other local agencies that, even if they are 35 miles apart, you could have some type of redundancy or share a system.
Chief, good to see you. Question, right now you said that your contract is about $425,000.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Contract for dispatch is
Yes.
about $425,000.
Yes, sir.
What is your estimated cost if you were to have your own PSAP? What would that cost?
Our own PSAP, we have got it around the same number as far as personnel and benefits. Obviously, we're going to have a lot rides on what happens here today, what our piece of the equipment is going to be. That we have forecasted to be able to absorb that over a 5-year period of time. So we will ultimately, within 5 years, be back to where we are today. But the most important thing being, again, the quality of service that we're providing to our community and having that control over our dispatch center. They just clearly do not share in our vision of where we're going.
Preaching to the choir. I understand that part I really get. And to me, if in the ideal world, I would much rather have a municipal police department as a PSAP as opposed to a community service district.
Chief, that community service district, those are not post-certified dispatchers, and they are not...
They are post-certified, sir, yes. And they have a private police department, and they do policing. I'll leave it at that.
Every question I had has been answered, and I will echo what Chief Langston said, is that I think it's all about service, and you made a very clear point about providing a better service to the community, and that's not only just how you talk to someone on the phone, but also how you deliver that service, and I think your argument's very compelling. I would support that.
There's some philosophical differences, probably amongst board members and even you folks, in consolidation versus non-consolidation. In my perfect world, I would want my own fire-only dispatch center that I controlled, that ran
Absolutely.
exactly the way that I wanted it, and it would be, I'm going to go out on a limb here, the best fire dispatch center that ever existed. However, I contract to a police dispatch center for my dispatch services. They don't do EMD, they don't do pre-arrival instructions, they don't do closest unit dispatch for fire trucks. I feel your pain.
Right.
So you say, why do you do it? And my answer is that I need to figure out a way to work through those issues. And I do it with my political figures. I do it with my city manager, and because I'm on 2 fire departments, also a vice chancellor of a campus. And I know it's going to take a while for me to get there. But while I feel your pain and I appreciate it, and if I could do it, I would, I also have to go back to my initial comment, which right now in the state of California, the most broken part of the 911 system is routing and accuracy. And given my comments earlier, I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
Yes, I absolutely understand where you're coming from, sir. And I want to make it clear that this is not a road we have not traveled down. We have tried to repair this over a period of 7 years and have been unsuccessful. Interestingly, there is an interim chief in place at the Community Services District who was our previous chief. So we thought we would have a little more response there as far as getting things corrected. But being an interim, he doesn't have a whole lot of ability to change things there. And we've got a system that's in place out there and a culture that is in place out there that is deeply ingrained and that is extremely difficult to change. And as we're transitioning to a a more professional police department and trying to enhance our services to our community. We have a dispatch center whose sole goal is to just get that call off of their desk and not be responsive to the community, and they just don't share our vision of where we're going. So, like I said, I recognize the importance of consolidation and being fiscally responsible with the 911 branch funding, but we really think we're in a unique situation here in the Tahachpi community, and we would respectfully request that you reconsider and recognize us as a new PSAP and provide that funding for us.
Chief, a couple questions for you. One was, how many different agencies does the CSD dispatch for?
We're the only ones, sir. They've reached out, to my understanding and my knowledge. They've been trying to sell this service to various other agencies unsuccessfully. So we are currently the only one.
So so they have their PD, and then you guys are
correct.
The two that they dispatch
Yes.
for. Okay. And then also, you'd mentioned quality a number of times, and it sounds, local control and quality is a big driver here, and I appreciate that. Can you just touch real briefly on what steps have you taken to try and resolve that issue?
We have, I've had meetings with the previous chief, with the dispatch supervisor. We bring forth every time there's an issue as far as a call not being properly handled or dispatched, that's brought to the attention of the dispatch supervisor as well as the chief. And despite reassurances that these will be taken care of and corrected, they continue to happen. I've been in this business for 3 decades. I'm not naive to that fact that those things do occur in a dispatch center. But for them to happen repeatedly and consistently, it's just unacceptable. And I've done it. The previous chief has done it, and we just have not been successful in resolving those situations.
And it looks like the city manager wants to add a few things.
So I do. Thank you. The Bear Valley CSD has a revolving door of general managers and police chiefs, quite frankly. I've been with the city for 12 years, so we have some stability. We have taken it to their board of directors, this particular issue, and the board has flatly said 5-0, no, thank you. I think it's also worth pointing out that the city of Tahachpi has adopted a general plan, along with the county of Kern, a specific plan that is very specific to the Tahachpi Valley. You may or may not be familiar with our area, but 4,000 feet on top of the hill here in Kern County. And we're very in tune with what we're going to look like when we grow up, right? So what that means is both the county of Kern and the city of Tahachpi have worked hard together very well to drive the growth in the city, an urban core. So we have our city limits. We respect those. We're not looking to sprawl, to go annex. We're looking to keep those city limits and to drive the growth in the city. Leave the county countryside so that we can have city and county. So what I'm saying is that we are growing. We were the fastest growing, or the 4th fastest growing city in the state of California in 2012. We have the hospital, the schools, the retail, all of those sorts of things. So it does make sense that there quite frankly is a role reversal. And that's what we'd like to see. I think it makes sense. It's not because I want the dispatch, just because I want the dispatch, but it makes all the sense in the world. We're the leaders in the community. We understand that. The people in the community recognize that, and we think it's time that we have our own dispatch. And so what we were denied was the initial funding for the equipment, the computer, the AT&T computer, hardware and software.
I guess one last question for me for the chief, and that's having 25 dispatch centers. I have appreciation for how much equipment is in a dispatch center and how costly it can get.
Yes.
Do you have all the other infrastructure, meaning your computer-aided dispatch system, your radio consoles, all that stuff?
We have the CAD system in place, and I have everything else ready to go. That was the additional $300,000 that we have in place to take care of that. I think importantly is when we constructed this building, the dispatch center was in there. It's all pre-wired, ready to go. It was just waiting the consoles and getting everything set up. So here we are.
Because I have to admit, this is a challenging question for me from the standpoint of I understand quality control, I understand local control, and all that is great. But when I look at the set and a fund line, it's going the wrong direction.
I understand
and it's
that,
really
sir.
trying to figure out, we got to fix that. And if it was going up, I think this would be an easy question for me. But the fact is it's going down, which gives me the struggle of, is this the time to do it? And not diminishing the strong argument you've made, because I think the public demands high-quality 911 dispatchers. Because when the emergency happens, we want to make sure that we provide a high level of service, not get the call off my desk and, be rude to folks. And, I think we all have an appreciation for a lot of calls we get aren't true emergencies. Some of them, they think they're an emergency, and to provide that control. So I have to admit it's a tough one.
I understand that, sir, but you know what? That's perfect, because it really segues right into my closing statement that says we would ask that this decision be a strategic decision and not based solely upon cost minimization. All right? The main consideration should be what is best for the Tahachpi community. So, thank you. Any other questions?
No, but if I could, I've seen the growth in Tahachpi. I'm always amazed when I drive through that area. And I would make a recommendation to recognize this PSAP and provide the funding to them. I don't think this community should be burdened by the drop in set in the funding. I think that's an issue for the Office of OES and the governor to address. And I don't think the residents of Tahachpi should be burdened. They're paying their taxes. And so I'd make a recommendation to support it at this level of the board.
Second it.
I think given the fact that you've explored other options and tried to talk to Kern County and you'd have a poor service level, I'd support it as well.
Okay, are there any additional comments and questions?
I hate to be the naysayer here, but according to the Warren Act, we have 90 days to make this decision. It's not something we have to make today, and I'd rather not make that decision on a 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is my first, honestly, it's my first.
I think we need to the board understands what the rules of engagement
I agree.
I would say if they came in and said, hey, we just built a new building, we want to put in a dispatch center, and they didn't answer all the questions that we threw at them as far as other options, I would definitely want it to come back. But I think they did a really good job of explaining all their options. And he didn't say it, but I could see some frustration on his face, like we've done everything we can to try to deliver a great service to our community, and we wouldn't be here if we could do that without the state's help. And so therefore I don't know what other further discussion or we can accomplish other than that.
I think we have to understand, though, the ramifications of the decision, knowing now that whenever a dispatch center that's part of a consolidated dispatch center is no longer content with its service, that they're going to be coming to this board for appeal to start their own PSAPs. So I just think we need to be aware of that.
Well, and one of the challenges that we did have, and we talked about it in our office, is that when we move, if we moved the call center, the calls, 911 calls from Bear Valley to Tahachpi, we would then have 2 PSAPs with a very low number of calls. So we kind of looked at that too. I just wanted to let you know that we're considering across the board. But I do want to offer up, I'm non-voting, but I'm going to make a recommendation, that we do take some time, because we do have 90 days to look at this, and if the board wanted the office to do some other due diligence in another area, we would be glad to go off and continue some analysis.
I had another question. I was not here when the decision or the criteria was changed to set the threshold of 300. I'd be interested in knowing the history behind that and what that driver was that kind of got us to what that threshold was. Because I think that it comes up of what are the ramifications, and I'd be also interested to know, have we denied other folks that just haven't appealed from the standpoint of are we opening up a floodgate through this process, or was there issues that we addressed with the 300 may or may not fall within those concerns, but in order to make an informed decision?
And we'd have to get back with you with that information, but we could provide that to the board.
I agree. I think that's an excellent question. Then the next step beyond that is what happens when a PSAP falls below 300? Is there a, will Ms. Talley come and threaten us with some funding repercussions?
Well, it's an interesting, I mean, there's a lot to this because there's also, you made mention that the other dispatch center will most likely go defunct if you pull out. There's just a lot of implications to this that I don't feel it's appropriate for us to rush to a decision today.
I think there's a lot of great consolidated PSAP models, and usually they involve joint leadership of the PSAP. This is certainly not the case here, and considering Leslie's been on this board since its inception, this is only the second time she's seen this. I don't think we're going to see a rush to jump out of a consolidated model into operating your own.
I may do it.
Well,
but again, you're a firefighter. You live in a perfect world. Just doesn't work that way.
And I think there's exceptions to everything, and I think, the appeal that we had was a smaller grandfathered police agency. I can't remember the name of it, but if we could, that's something where I think we approved that, but a year later, there was some issue with them not being able to sustain that again, and went back to the larger agency for dispatch services again after purchasing that equipment. So that's a concern that I have, just experiencing that first appeal and looking at just what they, the service level. They want to have their own local service and dispatchers in that area. They did end up transferring their calls after 5 to the sheriffs, but that was granted, and I think it was a year or so later that they were not able to sustain that. So it's just, it's a concern.
With all due respect, I don't think that there will be a floodgate of appeals, and that's what the beautiful part of an appeal is. You as a board can listen to the person or the agency appealing, understand and vet it, and I think we've done that today. So I would urge you to vote yes on this.
Okay, since we do have 90 days, I need the board to weigh in on what they'd like to do. Do you want to take some more time to think through this?
I think there's a motion on the floor. Do we need to vote on that original motion before we do something else, or can we strike it, or how does that work?
Thank you, Nate. I totally blew by that one. Apologize. But we do have a motion, and so we go back and reiterate the motion, please.
The motion was to recognize the PSAP and recommend funding for the PSAP.
Okay, so do we have further discussion? Is there a second?
I seconded it, yes.
Is there further discussion? We'll go to vote. Pardon me? Okay, without further discussion, we'll go to vote.
Scott Howland?
I'm going to abstain at this point. I would like additional info.
Charles Burdan?
Abstain.
Charles Cullen?
Aye.
Sheriff Edward Bonner?
The question. Is an abstention?
So I was going to ask.
Got to be a or nay.
Yeah.
It's not a vote. It's not a yes or a no. You're just abstaining from the vote.
And what do we need to have pass?
We have to have the majority of... Well, we have a quorum. We have to have the majority of the quorum.
I'll abstain.
Chief Nathan Trownett?
Abstain.
Leslie Wilson?
Abstain.
All right, and
Okay.
couple votes.
Yeah, I think you did.
Michael Langston and David Wilson went first and second, so
Did you vote?
those are ayes.
Didn't vote, but aye.
Oh, you didn't vote.
Aye.
Did everyone vote?
Chief
Did we go
Michael
through
Langston.
this? I want to make sure we did. Okay, Paul, could you tell us the number of ayes and the number of abstains?
We have 3 ayes and 4 abstains.
Okay, so the motion did not carry. So now to talk about the next steps.
Say we have a period of time to
We have 90
make a
days.
recommendation. I would move that the advisory board take this under consideration for further conversation and make a decision within that time frame. Bonner.
Howland will second that.
My only question is, when is our next meeting? Is it within that 90-day period, or is it outside of it?
I have to look. I believe it's within the 90-day period.
It's within the 90-day period, and it occurs in November.
You have the date?
November 18th, I think.
Yeah, because it's the 13th, so it would be outside. What we can do is we can change the advisory board meeting to the second week in November. And then that way we're within the 90 days. Further discussion?
Before we vote on it, what information are you, what information is the 911 office going to come back to us with? Or does the agency have to bring more information back? I think we should clarify what that looks like.
Well, the 911 office has no more information to bring back. If there's something that we've missed that you want us to go back and do some research on, we'll be glad to do that. If there's some research that you'd like to do through your own associations, then that is more than acceptable. We gave you a packet with the numbers. If there's more clarity in those numbers that you need, we can absolutely provide that. But we would need some direction from you as to what else you need.
That's why I brought up, I don't need any more information, but I think the people that have seen that the reason they did so is they want more information.
I would be interested in the call volume for the Bear Valley Springs Dispatch Center, carving out police department's sphere of influence.
They're solely, sir. I believe I have that information. I believe that was provided to me by Mr. Anderson when he provided us our numbers. So I could probably provide that to the office.
I'm sure you could. And I think for the board's purposes, I suspect that would help us make an informed decision.
That's fine. I can get that information and provide that to you.
Thank you.
I'm not looking for more information. I simply would like to take more time than the time we've been sitting here to contemplate all the issues that this group has brought up. And I think, honestly, it's in fairness to your request to see if I can change my own mind. Because I believe it is due that diligence. And there is a lot of tangible factors tied to this. And I just don't feel comfortable being put on the spot to make a decision in the amount of time allotted today, period.
One piece of, go ahead, Chuck.
And I would like to see from the 911 branch the correspondence between Tahachchi and the 911 branch on their request and the denied, and any analysis they did on the funding and so on.
We get all the backup documentation.
Yes.
And this may be a little bit more difficult, but is there a way to show maybe the last 3 years of data in terms of what, how many 911 calls originated from Tahachchi? Is that number going up? It sounds like it's a growing community, and that would be something we'd be interested to see.
We will see if we can pull that. I can't promise that, but we will see if we can pull it.
And then I would like additional information on our criteria of the history of why it was changed to the number that kind of brought us here today.
Sir, I think it would be also compelling for them to make, when they're making their decisions about your general plan and what you see your population projections to be. You mentioned the growth, and I think that would help see what it looks like in 5 years. And we all know it takes a while to build a center. So.
Karen, you'll be the point of contact to get the further information on the trending numbers and their transition plan, their plan for the center and the growth there.
Yeah, we'll pull this together. I have a list, and I'll go over it to make sure I have not missed anything. Call volume for Bear Valley Springs, the backup documentation on our numbers and how we put the package together when we did deny this becoming a PSAP. The last 3 years of call volume data, if we can extrapolate that specifically for Tahachchi, and then the history of the criteria for when a PSAP can be approved. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else?
Thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for my piece of paper with my agenda. I think this is the end of the agenda today. Future meetings is the next item. So we did talk about changing the date to the second week of November. So we will send something out to the board with a couple of proposed dates to make sure that everyone can attend. The other item that we had talked about is having every other board meeting in a different location other than Sacramento. So do we want to have the next board meeting down south, and is there somebody that would like to host it? No, Leslie, you did it last time.
$1 million facility that has a...
Oh, I just set that up, didn't I?
Dispatch center that has no dispatch.
We will get back with the board on where we'll have the next, and if we should have it in another location other than Sacramento. And Tahachchi is duly noted. Thank you. And then, are there any announcements by the board members?
I have one. If I could have Chris Herron just kind of step back up front and center here for a second. Chris, as you all know, has been my designee on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association for a number of years. And I wanted to personally thank him from myself, the association. And, you know, I think he represented the California State Sheriffs incredibly well on all the things that he has done here, but more importantly, he's represented public safety. And he's represented the citizens of California in a manner that just shows what a dedicated, capable, professional public servant he is. And I miss him dearly. I wish him all the well with his new job, and I just want to just thank you personally very much for all your service. And hopefully you'll still be with all the. It would be a shame to throw him out, for gosh sakes. Let's face it. He has so much to offer. So I hope that your continued participation in the 911 Advisory Board is there, and look forward to working with you some more. And in the meantime, I have a new designee, Paul Truxell, who we happily stole from the Sacramento Police Department. And
Paul has my number, so.
Paul not only does he have a number, I know that we have a series of ongoing conversations. So we're delighted to have Paul. Big shoes to fill. He's aware of that. But Chris, I just wanted to personally thank you on behalf of the State Sheriff's Association, and I'm sure the entire board here for what a great job. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And, you know, Charlie had kind words earlier. I think we've got a great group that's working together, LRPC work group. We've all said that many times, but, you know, it truly is. So it's been a joy. So much appreciated.
Thank you.
Any other announcements?
Yeah, I just have a question, and I thought you said earlier we're going to come back to it later on the agenda, but I feel like we quite haven't addressed all the issues that came with this letter and some of the issues I brought up earlier this week. And so I guess I have some questions probably to the 911 office about some issues we're seeing with pulling that data.
Okay, we can go back to an item,
So,
of course.
so I have a couple of questions. One was
Actually, could I get maybe Bill and Michelle to help with some of these questions? Is that okay? Okay.
Thank you.
I want to bring enough people to make sure you get
Yeah,
your
yeah, no, I
questions.
agree.
I want to make sure that people up here have the technical background.
Not the
to make sure
lawyer
they answer the
back.
question.
Can you bring the lawyer back? A couple of questions I had is, when back in the assembly hearings a couple meetings ago, we were talking about beta tests that ECATs were coming out with, that had some beta reports out there. And this wireless summary, transfer summary report that the PSAPs were asked to do, is that beta report that you were discussing a few months ago?
No, it's not a beta report anymore. Those reports were made active.
But that was the beta report that you were discussing earlier.
It was one of them, yes.
Okay. And then the reports that we ran, speaking from personal experience, appeared the data was incorrect. And I identified some in my email that the report said that the call wasn't transferred when in fact it was transferred. There's some, when you visualize the information, the towers aren't in the correct location. So the question is, have those reports been tested, and what reliability or what's your confidence level that the data is correct?
As far as the information where the calls are coming from, yeah, we're very confident in that, where that is. The other stuff we have to look at to see exactly what the issue was and why that tower was not showing up where it was should. Because we use the alley lat long to project where that tower should be.
And so if we notice errors, where should we direct that to?
I would direct it to Alicia Fuller in my office. She's the one that kind of spearheads this project for us.
Okay.
Yeah, and just send that information to her, and she can take that and address it with our contractor and make sure, and we look for the input, and I'm glad you are bringing this up, because in order to make this product better and for better use for you guys, we need to get this input and feedback, and so we can address these issues.
Okay. And then maybe I'm getting too much in the weeds on this, but going back to the letter and the demand that PSAP's do, and especially after, call it a threat of pulling funding away, I would like to, I think it would be appropriate that the state OES office send up a follow-up letter to do two things. One, to talk about if you need, I mean, there was an offer, if you need help to get the report done, call this number, and that was helpful. But I think there should be an offer of, it's busy time for everyone, staffing, that gives them an extension so they don't have to ask. That would be my first request. And then the second one is that they're told that there may be errors into, I don't know how to even word it, but double check their data when they pull it up. And just from the earliest tests, I think it's fair that you have to go back and kind of verify things until we know that the report's accurate. And again, I'm not so sure if I'm making a recommendation to be voted on, and it's of course just an advisory thing, but I think some people got rubbed the wrong way about the demand of getting this done, and I think it would be good to kind of build a bridge between the PSAPs and the state office again.
I don't think it needs to be voted on at this point. I will take back the recommendation to have another letter come out. And we will definitely, please contact Alicia, and I know that Michelle Bland has been extremely accessible. Anytime you run reports and look at data, it's always good to check for errors, and so I would hope that would be a standard process. But if we need to reiterate that, we can. We're in contact with the county coordinators and the PSAPs, and we'll continue the dialogue. I will go back and talk about the recommendation for another letter.
Thank you.
Okay? Okay, thank you. And now we'll move on. So if there's no further announcements, are there any additional public comments? Okay. And again, please state your name and who you're with, and we do need to limit this to 3 minutes.
It'll be very quick. Just following up on what was just said. Again, the WTOS program, we gave monthly reports. I'm not sure, show of hands, of who's actually seen them, but there are a tremendous amount of errors. We looked at 88,000 antennas, and 24% of the time, there were multiple lat longs for a single address. So your point is absolutely valid. The data needs to be looked at, and I guess it's not going to be looked at anymore. 26% of the time, there were multiple addresses for a single lat long. This data is riddled with errors. The data that is being delivered to the PSAPs needs to be scrutinized. That's it.
Well, I think we did mention earlier when Ms. Talley was here that we would like to see that data at least, even if the cellular carriers aren't taking any action on it, we as a board would like, I think there's a consensus we'd like to see that, unless I'm mistaken.
Yep, and there was a commitment to make sure you have it.
Those reports, I mean, maybe we can have those monthly, I mean, at our quarterly meetings, or be sent out monthly, I don't know.
We can just get the information to you.
Okay. The other thing is can we have the vendors here maybe at the next meeting to have them answer some of these questions of
the wireless carriers?
Invite them to the meeting. I mean, they may not show up, but
I have no problem doing that.
I was going to say, do we have any of the representatives from wireless carriers here? Because because I agree. I think we should send an invitation because they're part of the team, and I think they need to be involved in the dialogue and understand the dynamics and their part.
Right, because what you said is exactly right. We can give all the recommendations and look at all the data that we want, but if they don't make the changes, we're still right back to square zero.
Please state your name, who you're with, and please keep it to 3 minutes.
Kurt Warner, Public Safety Network. Well, this is our last day at work after 20 years here. I tried to get out the words that we needed to get out. I don't feel we had enough time. But as Don said, there is a lot of data that shows that we've been right. We've been warning the department there's a lot of things going right. We've studied this for a long time, and we've been truthful. We've been ordered to destroy that data, destroy the underlying data where it came from, and not talk to you about it. And so I can't talk to you about that stuff. But it just seems a little odd that in today's world of transparency, that you would want to see some of this stuff, and you'd want to keep it. But tomorrow the network's going to be brought down, and the data is going to be destroyed, and you're not going to get an opportunity to see it. So, in closing, I regret that we didn't have more time. I regret that Jill Talley ran out of here before we could address these things. She didn't stay to address the false statements and accusations she made. But, you know, one thing I'm going to say in closing, is that I was raised by my parents to tell the truth. And I've told the truth. Our team has told the truth. And we're without a job because we told the truth. Well, today's my mother's 86th birthday, and I hope I made her proud. I told the truth.
Can I ask him a quick question? When you talk about what data is going to be destroyed?
All the data that we've collected for the last 3 years that we've been paid, although not all that money comes to us because we share it with AT&T, almost $3 million worth of vital data that shows you things are not right here. We've collected that data. We collected better than anybody in the world, and we've produced reports, and there's a lot more to do with that data.
We requested that data.
I need to provide some clarification. In our contracts, we have legal terms and conditions that must be met. And so with that, the AT&T and PSN cannot keep the data. So they need to provide it to us, and then whatever they have after they provide it to us, anything else they keep, they need to destroy it. So we don't have our vital data out with contractors. This is standard language for the state of California.
The data they're discussing, you will keep.
We have met with AT&T, and they have assured us that we will have all the data and nothing will be destroyed without it making sure it gets to the state of California first. That's our agreement with AT&T, and that is standard contract language.
That was not our instructions.
Well,
but our instructions were, as we signed this agreement, that we would never, during the agreement, even be able to talk to you or share with you this information. And yet, with ECATs, they're free to show you the data. They're free to give you demonstrations about everything they do. They're free to do things that we're not free to do. This is all about fairness. It's all about truth. It's all about transparency.
Okay.
We have no, we are going to be turning over the reports as per our contract.
All right, 3 minutes is up, and thank you for the information because we will be circling around with our attorneys to AT&T's attorneys to ensure that our data is not destroyed. So thank you for the comments, and the 3 minutes is up.
That's the first we've heard of that. Thank you.
If there's no more public comment, thank you all. The meeting is adjourned.